Welcome to Flat Earth Debate, Uncut and After Show. I'm your host Nathan Oakley, and if you are new to this channel, or you've not done so already, then be sure to subscribe, hit the bell notification icon and join button if you'd like to become a Nathan Oakley 1980 channel member and keep up to date with the Flat Earth Debate. If you would like to support the channel, there is a super chat that runs alongside each of these shows while they premiere, and there's also a PayPal, Patreon, crypto and thanks button in the info box below the video. Speaking of Patrons, I'm going to do a quick shout out to all of you who do support me on Patreon, so a massive shout out, thanks and appreciation to Moon Harvest, Amish Earther, Naughty Thumbnails, Mitch Kennedy, Original D-Rose, Rod, The Name's Burley, Todd Wazzle, Jason Hornsby, Christoph Fournier, Flat Earth Travolta, JMels24, Unimento, M, Iron26, Endless, Goldie McKinnon, Retro Bill, More Books, Cannabear, Fibre Oats, Bogey, John Kays, Patrick Gunnels, Banter, Mel B. Styles, Hairy Blade, Mobile Max 777, Rob W, Reese Pound, Del West Watson, Maria Neelands, Unbelievable Productions, Blue Ridge Ranger, Abraham Mohammed, Skeptic 936, Life is Short, Texas Mike, Tina Baker, David Wayne Foster, and Dank. So another massive thank you to all of you for supporting me on Patreon. Now I will hand over to whoever is in Discord and Google so you can enjoy their dulcet tones while I set up for today's live show.
And the sky was like really, really red, right? And that means rain, right? So, because that's what the weather network also predicted, it's going to rain today, and I don't know, later too. But it's interesting to see that now with my own eyes, right? The skies are red in the morning, means rain. And when the skies are red in the evening, it means nice day the next day. Pretty cool stuff.
Always?
It's red sky at night, shepherd's delight. Red sky at morning, sailor, take warning.
There you go.
That's a good one.
Never heard that before. Okay.
Never heard it. No,
I never heard it before either. Well, I heard it when I looked into it, but Jesus said something similar too. Remember, Neil? He said when you see the sky is red in the morning, you know there's bad weather on the way. But you know what I mean? And then that's what made me look into it, and that's when I found out what Nathan just said. It's saying that's been around for a while.
Me, I'm colorblind, so often, more and more frequently, obviously as I get older, people will say, "Oh, what a beautiful sky." I'll look up, see clouds, and go, "What about it?" Oh, look at all the colors. I go, sky to me. It doesn't look any different to any other sky, because I only know it as blue because I've been told it's blue. You know, half the time my kids will have bubble baths, right? This happened last night, and they chucked in a bath bomb, and I'm like, "Wow, what a vibrant color! What color's that?" And they're like, "Purple." I'm like, "Yeah, I can see purple then," because as soon as they say purple, I know that whatever that color is then purple, so I then associate it with purple. But up until that moment, till they said the colour, I had no idea what colour it was. You know, I'm just looking at a bright colour.
Did you ever hear of the purple people eaters?
No.
You like them. The football team in America called the Minnesota Vikings, and they were bright purple.
Well, that's wonderful. So,
well, you'd be able to follow them because you'd be able to follow your team. You could see purple.
I don't think you quite understand what colourblind means, Neil. No, that would not mean that at all.
You just said you could see purple, did you not?
No, I said I told myself that I could see purple based on being told what purple was by two children who can see colour.
Right, so you'd be able to recognize it again, right?
No. Otherwise, I'd have recognised it this time, wouldn't I? Obviously not. Bloody hell, Neil.
Yeah, I'm all confused because you said, "Oh, I could see purple."
I told myself.
I'm thinking you could recognize when you see the same color again that you could say, "Hey, that's purple."
No.
So I guess I don't know.
Right, let me explain again. I see a colour that I don't know. I ask my kids what colour it is. They tell me purple. And I go, "Oh, yeah. So I can see purple then." No, I can't. Otherwise, I'd be able to know it next time I saw it. This time I couldn't. Last time I couldn't. I won't ever be able to. Now, when the sky turns a different colour, I look at it and associate it with blue because I know it's blue. So it just looks blue. Now, if someone says, "No, it's not, it's red," I go, "Really?" Now, there are exceptions to that. Obviously, I can see different colours, but I get them wrong. Make sense? So, for instance, when the blood
Yeah, I
moon
got it.
came, yeah, I could see that was red. That was a given. There wasn't any doubt in my mind what I was looking at. It changed colour, and the colour I associated with what it changed to was red. And then when my wife came around, well, wow, it's red. I was like, yeah, that's what I thought. Because red is one of those colours that I can see reasonably well. But then again, I still get that wrong too. Anyway, we're in a shadow, I
Yeah,
know
so
that
there's
much.
there's no getting it by associating with the last color you recognize by your kids telling you. It doesn't matter, because if you see purple again, it's not going to register.
Right, exactly.
And also what you're saying is that the like two different colors could look the same to you then, right?
Yeah, exactly. To my detriment when I've blown up an amplifier or two trying to fix wires from the 70s and I've just mixed up the colours. Anyway, fun.
It's supposed to take, correct?
In octane,
Yeah.
yeah, it
Shouldn't
should
it
say
tell
on
you?
it'll say underneath the fuel filler cap. It should, well, depends on the car, I suppose, but on every car I've ever had, it tells you what octane fuel you're supposed to use under the fuel cap.
Right, because my brother swears that all he puts is the highest, you know, the super unleaded.
Well,
He'll
why?
never put regular, and he sees the difference. That's what I'm saying. I don't think he breaks it down like you did. I think he just believes that the higher one's better.
Well, no, it is and it isn't. The high one also comes with a load of additives in it. So you could argue that it's better. The fuel company would argue it's better, but can you squash it more to get more bang out of it? That's based on the car. If you can squash the fuel to warrant 97 octane, and if you can, it will be slightly more efficient by doing so. So you're better off, but you have to then calculate if the fuel cost increase is worth it for the efficiency increase. More often than not, it isn't. But that isn't necessarily why people buy high octane fuel. You buy it because you want the car to go faster, or at least that would be my reasoning behind buying high octane fuel. If the fuel can be utilized in that way by the engine, if it can squash it more to get the benefit out of the higher octane value, then it's worth putting it in. But you just have to look in your handbook. If it says that it requires 95 octane, then why waste your money on 97?
Yeah, I got you.
They do big tuning cars, right? They'll tune them in the same with the same idea, right? So you might be trying to go for 1,000 horsepower, big massive V8 engine, right? But they'll also decide in advance whether or not they want it to run on bloody ethanol. They could run it on, something completely different, or just regular crappy pump fuel. Now, obviously, they're going to appreciate that you're going to get less fuel out of it if you run it on regular pump fuel, or whatever they call it, 95 octane we have here. Well, if you tune it to run on regular fuel, you'll tune it so it runs nicely on regular fuel. Just obviously you don't get you get slightly less power, but that's how the car's tuned. So you can have stuff that's really powerful that's designed to run on regular fuel.
Got it.
Anyway,
So what are we talking about today in flat Earth? Are we still gonna, because the lack of let's say opponents coming in and challenging us, or having any proof of their magical spinning water ball, are we gonna go at it with each other day in and day out?
We're at the 11:44 mark of a 3-part video. We're on part 2.
yeah, we're on part 2 of this video, right? And I've got to be honest, listening back, I couldn't listen to my own show because of his audio. It's absolutely
terrible.
horrendous.
It's
So
terrible.
we just assume it's a sphere. Eridosny said
No, don't
this
do it
angle
now. Wait till the
has
show.
got to be equal to
Yeah, but I don't want to poison the live audience with it for a third
No,
time.
no, oh my gosh. Do you not understand that not everyone thinks the way you do? There are people waiting to sequentially go through this video because they are using it for their future arguments, and you are giving them the platform of how to do those arguments whenever you pause and say, well, that's not right because of this. If you're going to it's like not labeling a video and saying, go to my channel and watch that video. You said, which one? I don't know. Just pick anyone.
Yeah, Nathan, what's wrong with you?
It's horrendous.
No, the
Come on,
audio's
there's
horrendous.
a system.
The
The audio sucks. Yeah. But you know what? It's still listenable and people learn from it. And it's just this one guy. I'll give you something now to talk about. I'll post it.
Well, excuse me.
Well, all right. Well, someone's got to help you. This is from Perplexity AI.
Okay.
All right. So go ahead and click on it. And I just went there and just hit a few, search words, and let's see what it says.
Celestial equator. Do you want to read it out?
Yeah. I mean, scroll down first, Nathan, just so you see that I asked another question. What is the relationship between celestial equator and the Earth's equator? Then it gives the sources and it gives the answer. Then another question, can the celestial equator be seen from Earth? Then the sources, then the answer. And then no tilts to Earth on vernal equinox, the sources, and then the answer. And then what is the vernal equinox and how does it differ from the autumnal equinox, the sources, and the answer? So this AI is really cool because it actually gets you all the citations for you. And then it tells you the answer. It's so quick. It's fantastic.
Can we go through this? I would much prefer to spend the entire live stream going through this. And then in the after show, we'll go through part 2, second section, labeled as part 3 on 1971 FED.
If you'd like, sound? As long as you finish that video all the way to end of part 3, because it's epic.
In the after show.
You can do it in the after show.
Yep, fine.
But just finish it.
Yeah, we'll finish it. We'll do it in the after show. We'll have a nice, concise, hour-long live stream covering what you've covered with AI. I'm more than happy to do that. Because then it's control.
No, that's fine.
Plus it means, as much as you guys take the mickey out of me pushing buttons, the whole pushing buttons and changing screens around whenever we're playing a video is actually quite challenging, as much as it may not seem it. If you go back and look at what's actually happening on screen, how much is occurring, how many times the screen transitions, it's frequent when I'm doing a video. So I'm even just now, just doing this Equinox AI or Equator AI or whatever it was, the questions. Letting in whoever just came, D-Rose, means that I'm having to transition, change where my mouse is pointing, let someone in, retransition back to a different page. You know what I mean?
No, I get it. I knew when I suggested that guy that his audio was going to cause trouble. I knew.
So you knew it. You did it anyway. This is all your fault.
I did it because the globe dies with that guy, and it's important to people to see why and how they trick us. And the guy, especially by the end of the third video, is just showing you the equatorial plane, that all the angles come from there. He goes into the hollow earth. He finds Danny Faulkner with a sextant. I mean, the whole thing is comical, the way we've positioned their argument based on their own argument and the citations they give us. So that's why I put it there. Now, the problem is that I'm not going to be around for all the after shows, and I'm going to miss some of the things I want to say, but I can make it for the actual show. So that's the only regret I have.
Well, that's all right. Well, why don't we cover some of it now?
No, I want the panel. I want John. I want everyone here. It's like,
well, they should be here then. Let's go, guys.
Come on, listen to Neil. 97 octane today.
Something wrong with Neil and D-Rose? I mean, what's your problem?
No, Neil just went from 95 to 97 octane.
Don't put my name
I'm
in it.
saying, my thing is they should be here. Then they should be here as soon as the show starts.
John's got kids. He's taking care of 6 kids. My goodness, give the guy a break.
Give his wife a break. 6 kids, my God.
I mean, the guy has a house full of kids.
Hey,
I know, and sometimes I feel like he's taking care of everything himself.
Sometimes he does, but the whole point is, wow, there's an echo.
That's D-Rose. It's D-Rose. He's not even said anything yet.
I just want to let y'all know, speaking of absence, being that I'll be starting this new place working on October 23rd, I used to have Mondays and Fridays off working part-time, partially because my boss was retiring, but I'm going to be starting fresh, so I might not be able to be present on the panel in the mornings anymore, Monday through Friday. I'm not sure. I don't want to. Oh wow, good. Okay.
I was going to say, we're not your parole officer. You don't have to tell us all your times and schedules.
I'm just telling you, bro, in case y'all be saying, wow, we haven't seen Richard D. Rose in a while. Maybe he's the Glober. Maybe he got
Trust me,
converted
it
like
ain't gonna
Ray.
happen, D.
No doubt.
They
I'm
don't
just
care.
saying, I'm putting on the record. It ain't because I converted to being a Earth Rising or a Glober. It's just that I got impressed with the new employment.
Listen, no one here jumps to conclusions like that. I mean, that's just silly.
Anyway, if you do, we will miss you. If you do return, we will never mention it again.
That's terrible. I like it, D-Rose. Don't worry. I got your back. Don't worry. When you're gone, I'll act like you. How's that?
Thank you.
I don't know. His connection went dodgy. That must mean he went back to a globe.
This guy,
That's right, Regis.
This guy with his 60 hertz transformer hum through the microphone and clipping the microphone and overloading the microphone. Oh, it's just so painful.
Well, why do you think they call it 60 hertz? Because it hurts Nathan Oakley.
Hey, wait, do I?
First of all, wait, hold on, D. The problem is, here's the problem, and it goes with this morning. Because you're colorblind, your hearing is exceptional. That's what's happening.
This guy's audio sucks, Neil. You don't need to be colorblind.
Time out.
There's no such thing.
Does my
Hold on, let
audio
me just
suck?
cover that for Neil. Right, there isn't such. People who are in the recording industry, the numpties in the recording industry, have this idea of people having golden ears. No, that's not true. You know, there's plenty of very, very old sound engineers, right, who have lost a good proportion of their top end hearing. Doesn't mean they're not good sound engineers anymore. They know what they're doing. So for me, the reason I can hear this stuff is because the room, over the last 4 years, every birthday, Christmas, GoFundMe, you name it, every penny I've had, surplus to scraping by, I've chucked at acoustic treatment in this room so that I can hear a pin drop in it. It's very, very, very quiet, unless I've got the window open, which I have at the moment. But you know, we're set back from the road, so it doesn't make a great deal of difference unless it's windy or rainy, or there's kids in the school that's over the road. Anyway, aside from that, it's very, very quiet, and there's very few reflections in the room. So that means that the very good equipment that I've got, which I've had for 25 years, apart from the amps, which again were bought by people who contributed towards them, and they also produce a 60 hertz main sum. If you're about, I don't know, 6 foot away from them, maybe a bit less, 5 foot away from them, and they're all on, all 5 of them, you can hear them. You can hear the exact same noise that you can hear from this guy. Now, I'm further than 6 foot away from them, so who cares? But that's, you know, the small sacrifice from going from really expensive high-end 10-year-old amps to very cheap studio amps. I mean, they're not cheap, they're just adequate. You know what I mean? Anyway, the point is, you can hear 60 hertz from them. That's transformer hum. Well, I can hear it in the room because that transformer hum would typically sit below the noise floor of most people's room. Yeah? So it's, I don't know, 25 decibels of transformer hum at 6 feet. Well, because the room is 20 dB noise floor, incredibly quiet, like half the noise of a library, you can hear that. Well, that means that when I'm listening to you and there's a car going by or there's some kid in the background screaming, anybody can hear that on a phone. But subtleties like a really deep mains hum, which is what 60 hertz is, that's sub-bass territory. Well, I've got a subwoofer for that reason. So that by the time we've covered this video for the 3rd time and the audience has gone, why is it that I just don't like listening to this? They don't know what it is. I know what it is. 60 hertz mains hum and distorted mic. Well, the distorted mic they'll recognise, but they won't know that there's this horrible low frequency noise that's going.
Yeah, but what about your car? You were telling me about intricate noises you hear in your car.
That's in a car.
Your studio's not in your car with you.
The difference with those noises in a car is when you're putting your toe down on the loud pedal and it makes loud noises and buzzes and whistles, you go hoo because you're going quicker. And that's exciting. And you want loud noises to associate with that feeling of acceleration. That's good. When you're listening to somebody who's trying to give you clear information, You want intelligibility. You don't want pops and whistles and bloody mains hum at 60 hertz. They're all terrible. It's like, it is amongst the worst possible recordings, short of it being inaudible, right? It's as close to as crap as you can get and still listen to it. But it's grating. Anyway, I'm going to stop moaning.
Hang on, listen. I have a friend named Doug. He's a DJ. He was sound engineer before, hippie generation. He still has long hair, funky looking glasses. So we're at a friend's party, and he's the DJ, and he's got the whole setup and everything. So I'm talking to him, and I go, "Man, you've changed your system," because I'd seen it before. And he says, "Yeah." You know what I found out? I go, "What?" He says, "I found out no one cares. My ears pick up everything, but no one else cares. So I just transferred everything to MP3 and I just play it because no one could tell the difference."
Yeah, but Nathan would never do that because he's a nut job.
No, this guy was a nut job. He was into sound like you couldn't believe. He had expensive everything. And he says it just didn't matter anymore because people couldn't spot what he spotted.
Yeah, well, now he's made it hard for us because now we can spot the things that I wasn't spotting before.
Well, you ought to thank him. You ought to thank him.
No, it's only if you're looking for them that you hear them, right? The problem with almost every single audio setup ever isn't the equipment. It's the venue. It's the room that it's in that causes the problems. So I'll give you an example, right? If you go to a technical spec for an amp that's current, and you'll see 1% distortion up to whatever the rated power of the amplifier is, which is absolutely superb. However, in a room, what is distortion? Distortion is any deviation in timing or frequency response from the original or volume, right? That's distortion, okay? So if you've got a flat line representing frequencies from 20 kilohertz, 20 hertz all the way up to 20 kilohertz, your hearing range, if you're 5 years old, right? That range represents as a flat line, which means that every frequency along that band is the same volume. Now, ideally, you'd also have it decay, that is, go away at the same rate also. Okay, that's zero distortion if they're all perfectly identical, every frequency. Now, as soon as you put any source of sound, be it a person, a guitar, or a stereo, or a PA, in any space, immediately you get reflections. That is to say, the sound not only comes to your ears from the thing that's producing the sound, my voice in this instance, but my voice then bounces off a wall and then comes back again. What does that do? Well, it does one of two things. Number one, it increases the original sound in amplitude, volume. It also alters the frequency because some of the frequencies that come back off the bounce interlace with the original waveform and cause destructive interference. It lowers that frequency. The amount of energy at that frequency gets less. Or constructive interference, where the frequency bounces off the wall and then increases the amplitude of that particular wave at that particular frequency. Right? That's distortion. Now, bearing in mind that I said in an amp you get 1% distortion, in a room it's sometimes 60% distortion. People don't realize. Yeah, it's in a room. The room is now distorting it massively. It might be 30 dB plus or minus on any given frequency away from the original source. Now, so your guy with the PA, he puts his PA into a room and he's listened to his PA and knows how much better one set of speakers is over another set of speakers, right? But he puts it in the room. He's got no reference. He hasn't got the old system to compare it to in that room. He's just got the better system in that room versus last week in a different room with the old system, right? And he knows the better system's better. But in any given room, both are shit. Both are suffering from, let's make it more conservative. Let's say it's 20% distortion. It's plus or minus 10. Outrageous, it never would be. But if it was a particularly big room, it might be, right? If you were right up close to the speakers. Okay, 10% distortion, well, that's massive. It's significant. Yeah? So it doesn't matter where you put the equipment. Right, back to what I've spent all my money on for the last 4 years. Right? You try and ideally remove that from the room. Get it to go away. absorb it off the wall so it doesn't bounce back into the mic. So that as I get loud and my reverberation time in the room is still really low, it doesn't matter what volume I start talking at, it's not bouncing off the wall and coming back. It's bouncing off a diffuser, which is breaking it up in time and amplitude, and then it's spreading it out everywhere so that when it finally reaches the mic after the bounce, it's been dissipated. So it doesn't add to the frequency response, therefore make it distorted. That's what makes things sound crap. So people are like, I bought this new system, it don't sound any better, or no one cares or can tell the difference. Yeah, that's because there isn't any. Yeah, you know, put it into a really controlled environment and compare the two, and you'll see a massive difference, because one will be better than the other if it's got less distortion. But most people don't appreciate that it's not the equipment that's creating a crap sound, it's the environment.
Very well articulated, eloquently said. That's right on point for any person that does any kind of vocal recording, me included. You said it right on point. And that's why I was always told before, which is why I did I didn't go in depth as you did, but I did something where I at least encased myself within a sound reduction environment around me and my microphone, my condenser mic. Therefore, I can alleviate the reverb and any kind of feedback and things like that.
Go outside.
And your piece,
The easiest fix for most YouTubers who have absolutely god-awful sound, go outside, right? Get rid of the room and the sound quality. Don't get me wrong, if you go out in a bloody hurricane, obviously that's what you're going to hear. If you go out into somewhere that's got a road nearby, you've obviously got to go outside and find somewhere that's quiet. But if you can make your recording relatively close mic'd outside, you alleviate 90% of the problems that most people have in their recordings, because you've suddenly got rid of all of the reflections from the room. Just do it yourself. Just get your phone, right? Go to whatever the recording is, or video if that's easier, if you can't figure out how to get an audio recorder, and just record into it in your room. Testing 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Press stop, and then walk outside, yeah? And then find somewhere quiet, and just from the same distance to the mic, just do the exact same thing. Testing 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Stop recording. Then go back inside and just listen to one versus the other. And one, the first one, will be distorted, echoey, lively, just sound crap. The second will just sound clear. As long as there's not a load of background noise, one will sound clear, the other will not. It's just that simple.
Yeah, because it's all the sound waves will be sucked up. As long as, like you said, as long as you don't have horns and people talking in the background, the sound won't have anywhere to bounce off. It'll be just dispersed.
It's some kind of absorption rather than traveling. Yeah, I think I've heard that argument before.
That's nice in practice. Some kind of absorption. Most people hang a rug on the wall. Well, that does nothing. Whereas in reality, you need to absolutely plaster the room in absorption for it to have an effect, as I've quickly found out. A couple of panels does nothing. A rug on the wall does less than nothing. But, 6-inch deep traps, which are just absorption on every surface, that makes a difference. But then you're into spending thousands.
I changed. When I worked in Times Square Church, they had overflow rooms that fit 300-400 people, a ton of them. And they were all carpeted, right? So it was a pain in the neck to keep the carpet clean. So I talked them into changing it to all ceramic. And they did that. And the sound guy, the next Sunday when it was service, was pulling his hair out. He came up to me, he's like, "What did you do?" He was having problems with the sound in every one of the rooms. I literally gave him the headache that would drive him to retire, because they took up all the carpet and they put ceramic down. It messed up the whole sound.
Yeah. Well, I mean, the carpet doesn't actually do a great deal. It only soaks up high frequency anyway, but, in some big spaces, that can be enough to make a difference. So, yeah, if all you've got is carpet and you get rid of it, then, yeah, it's going to get worse.
I did not understand what he was talking about, but I kind of do, because it was hard ceramic floors, and now you're talking about nowhere for the sound to go. Am I phrasing that right?
Yeah, it's just reflective. The word is the same as with light. It's a reflective surface. The more reflective the surface is, but depending on the frequency, even carpeted surfaces, it only really absorbs anything from about 6,000 or 7,000 hertz upwards, which is really, really high frequencies. Anything other than that, it doesn't make any difference. It's still reflecting those frequencies below that. I mean, it's absorbing a little bit of them, but not very much. So the carpet doesn't do anything. People think that carpet's some sort of wonderful absorber, and it just isn't. In fact, in studios, they don't even have carpet. They get rid of it because it's taking away too much high frequency. It's just a high frequency, really high frequency absorber. Normally, if you've got a studio covered in absorption, you end up taking away too much high frequency. So if you go into a professional studio, you'll never see a carpeted floor. It's always hardwood. Then there's everything else is soft except the floor.
That's a fact. That's a fact because my mentor, Grand Mixer DXT, he used to use, I think they're trying to renovate it, but he used to use Frankie Lyman's old studio out there in Orange, New Jersey. And it was hardwood all over the floor. All over the floor. The walls were treated, the ceiling was treated, and he also had these styrofoam, like 6 foot tall, like look like twin size bed foam mattresses that he would have, that you would sit or either stand in the center of, one behind you, 2 on the side of you, with the mic in front of you. And that would be the greatest flat sound you can ever get.
Well,
was that robot?
No, it's all good. I was actually sticking a piece of acoustic treatment up that's come away from the ceiling. My ceiling treatment's all stuck up with double-sided sticky tape and blue tack. And
Good morning, Adam.
Occasionally, some of it falls off.
My turtle escaped.
Turtle?
So Nathan will tell you, you really got to know how to do frequencies. Well, you can't control Neil and my mic, but we have those tenor voices. You know, Neil gets way up there like that. And my voice doesn't have much not too much baritone on it at some times. So, you know, that can be really piercing to the audience, sitting on his ears.
Good morning, John.
Good morning.
John got that Barry White voice.
Good morning.
That's more of a compression issue, so it's just setting the compressor so it acts nicely on all of the different tones of your voices. In G+, that's actually one of the biggest challenges because I can't adjust any of your volume individually. So I've got one volume coming out of G+, and I have to kind of set the compressors and volume in my mixer to make you all seem the same similar volume, even though obviously a bassier voice carries more energy.
Right, and that's why it sounds like diddly doo doo when Ball Busters, Huey does his Ball Busters or whatever he calls it. It's Ball Busters. It's like he can't get those volumes equal because he's strong. He's like, you know, and then you got Betty going, then you got Adam mumbling, you can't even. I got to turn my volume down when he talks and then turn it up when they talk.
Speaking of Barry White, how about Lou Rawls?
Yeah, he had a deep voice, but yeah.
Well, that's it then.
My bad. I'm pressing buttons and getting drinks and stuff.
That's all right. I'm trying to figure out what's.
I'm still waiting for that Eli impersonation of Nathan opening up the show. Y'all told me he does a great job. I haven't heard it yet.
Just Discord. Are you the only one in? Well, no, you're in Master B. Who's in Discord now?
There's a few. There's let's see here, 11 with me and Nathan. So 9.
Yo, good morning.
Good morning, Discord.
Morning, Mighty Mush.
Morning, Righteous.
Morning.
Mighty Mush Sled Dog team. I love it.
Started the show.
No.
1 more minute.
So the 29th is United Kingdom daylight savings, and November 5th is ours. So they're not ending it like 8 months ago.
I think it reverses each year. The one time we're before them, the other time they're before us.
You might be right. I didn't take notice to that, but I know we're always a week away or in front.
Yeah. They need to get rid of that. That was mainly for farmers.
I kind of got used to it. I kind of like it. Look forward to it. It's getting darker earlier, though, I noticed.
Well, that's the sun's movement as it does its circuit throughout Cancer and Capricorn.
And therefore, it's a globe.
Exactly.
This is the first time I hear somebody
you
say
go.
they
You
like
just
the
proved it.
time change. Nobody likes a time change, man. Okay, what do you like about it? It screws up everything.
I like going into my car and
I
changing the times.
got used to it.
I really enjoy doing that.
You like changing the clock in your car?
Yeah.
You like changing the...
I'm being sarcastic. That really irritates me, the fact that I have to go in and do
I
that.
know. Yeah.
In one of my cars, it's the old one. In the other one, it's the corrected one. And I just don't change it. I say, yeah, I know.
Yeah.
My VCR is still blinking 12.
VCR.
Yeah.
That I haven't heard in many years. You were going to say next? Your Betamax is the time is off.
No, his 256 Atari computer.
No, what was that one? The Commodore 64.
Yeah, Commodore 64. I remember that.
Yeah.
Big news in that day. Big news.
Oh yeah. Up until it was before Atari went. Well, I don't know. I can't remember.
Buenos dias. Buenos dias.
Good morning. Good morning. That's a good buenos dias.
Hola, ¿qué tal?
Bien, muy bien. You too?
Gracias, gracias.
You got to finish it off with.
Moving on.
Buenos dias,
Any scientific evidence of gravity?
No scientific evidence of Venus dias.
Gravity?
What is gravity?
We don't need no stinking gravity.
Can you tell me what gravity is?
The bending of a fourth-dimensional pseudo-geometric time invented by Einstein as a result of the uneven distribution of mass. My bad. Bloody hell, Neil.
So how does that keep me on the Earth, and how does that keep all the oceans on the Earth?
It doesn't. Okay, it doesn't. In the ideas of 108 years ago, Newtonian gravity, which still taught to children in school up to a high school level, pre-higher education level, then it's a force that holds you to a ball. I mean, the fourth dimensional pseudo-geometric space-time bending as the uneven distribution of mass cause is asserted by Einstein goes, there is no force holding you to a water ball flying through a vacuum. That's not a force. But for you, if you're a high school educated person in the current age, you are taught the 108-year out-of-date rhetoric of Newton ascribed falsely to him as a force that holds you to the ball that flies through space. Hope that's clear.
So you're telling me that somebody's imagination, a thought experiment, if you want to call it that, has tricked most of the known world that we're living on a ball orbiting in space? Really?
I don't know if I care about the hidden hand. It's in terms of. I know the lie, Neil, and I can point it out. Shout out to Jardo. Hi all, been a while, but still love you all. Hope you're all cured from the force of gravity. There is no force of gravity, Jardo, but thank you for the super chat. Also, shout out to Godzilla37, who gifted 5 memberships. Whoever picks those up.
I was sniffing around relativity, and it's an asymptotically flat space-time. I wonder if that has anything to do with the equatorial plane.
Absolutely. I mean, when they describe space across its vastness as being flat, when utilizing the fourth dimensional reified space-time bending as a non-force force that you can think of as a force, then they disclaim how flat it must be. Now, I'm assuming that that's as a direct consequence of how the world is actually interpreted, because all roads lead to a flat Earth. And in the instances that we've currently been covering, or been previously covering over the last couple of weeks, it's because of the equatorial plane, which we're going to get into in a minute. Nice segue.
Thanks.
So 10th Man has been a busy boy talking to... should I say? Yeah, I should really cover this, because I'm going to put it in the live stream title. Once we've done what we're going to do, which is this, questions for AI, that 10th is going to cover, we will get back onto astronavigation for beginners, but it may spill into the after show. So if you're watching this on an after show, then wonderful. Spin forward if that's specifically why you've come here, because I can't stand the guy's mic, so I'm going to relegate it to after show, as we've done 2 live shows on it. Anyway, this is what we're covering today. So preamble, 10th, if you would, for what this is, and then hopefully you'll read through some of the answers that you've got from the AI in regards to the questions you've asked, and we'll discuss those answers after you've read them. How's that sound?
Yeah, good. You got ChatGPT, I guess, and then this is Perplexity AI, another AI tool. And it's really useful because this one gives you sources you can go back to and then go from there and even go, dig deeper. So the first question, if you've got it on the screen, is celestial equator. And it says the celestial equator is in the... Hello? There's feedback.
I'm going to blame D Rose. Go ahead. Hopefully that will resolve
Okay, celestial equator is an imaginary circle on the celestial sphere that is on the same plane as the Earth's equator. It is an abstract projection of a terrestrial equator into outer space and is a plane of reference in the equatorial coordinate system. The celestial equator is defined to be infinitely distant, so the ends of the semicircle always intersect the horizon due east and due west, regardless of the observer's position on Earth. The observer standing on Earth's equator visualizes the celestial equator as a semicircle passing through the zenith, the point directly overhead. As the observer moves north or south, the celestial equator tilts towards the opposite horizon. At the poles, the celestial equator coincides with the astronomical horizon. The celestial equator is 0 degrees declination, and the poles are plus 90 degrees and minus 90 degrees. Right ascension is the celestial equivalent of longitude and can be expressed in degrees. The intersection of the celestial meridian and the celestial equator is down from the zenith by an angle equal to the altitude. And then it shows some images there. So I'll pause there before the second question.
Okay. When they describe in the AI answer the same plane as the equator, should that not set off alarm bells for anybody reading it who's a baller? Because the equator is described as the outside edge of a sphere Earth on a particular point on a map. Now, we know it's derived from an elevation angle measurement to Polaris, and its extremity is the equator. But they don't know that. But in the description, it's saying it's a hypothetical imaginary line that's on the same plane as the equator. How can the equator have a plane if you believe you're on a ball?
Exactly. There's a problem there because that's going to be curved, and it's not.
This is what we're talking about. It's on screen in the second image on the right. This yellow surface. Now, if you want to take it as read that what they've depicted in the center of it, right next to where my mouse is a sphere.
Hang on. I got to interrupt you. The yellow is the ecliptic. It's the sun's path at their made up 23.5 degrees.
Sorry, my bad. The celestial equator is this other, whatever color it is, circle. Blue. Okay, my bad. Regardless, the example I was going to make doesn't change. So what they've got in the center of that, this flat plane, the equatorial plane, is a ball Earth. But the ground positions that you're measuring, if you're taking it as read that you're at the center of this ball Earth, because that's the actual plane and how it works, can extend out in terms of the plane and ground positions for stars all the way out on any of this surface. In other words, the ball in the middle, with you in the middle of it, looking out at stars and measuring angles off a plane, has absolutely no use. It has no, it's surplus to requirements. You don't need this ball if you're standing at the center of the flat plane and measuring things that are on the surface, which are all reference to this plane. The globe Earth in the middle does nothing. It's literally useless.
Yeah, if you look at the third picture, which is the black background, and it says celestial equator, it's got an extension from the terrestrial Earth's equator, from the phony globe, all the way to the imaginary infinite celestial sphere. So in reality, they're showing you what they're doing here is they have a flat plane that they get all their measurements from. This would include the sextant, elevation angles. And then because of the way your dome of vision is, as shown here by the celestial sphere, they put you on the outside. So the stars that are on the celestial sphere is really where their Earth curve is. But to get the reference, you have to go to the center of Earth, which is silly, and need a flat plane to get your elevation angle. So they're using the sky and the arc of the sky to say you're on a globe, the protractors, so to say.
Shout out to Retro Bill. He says, "Greetings from the Crab Nebula. Celestial angling is great here on Europa. Once you crack the ice." Anyway, hugs and smooches, Retro Bill. Thank you very much for the super chat. Really appreciate the support.
The key words in this first part is the first, from the first get-go. The celestial equator is an imaginary circle on the celestial sphere that is on the same plane as the Earth's equator. So now you say, where do you get your measurements to all the stars? From the equatorial coordinate system, which is that plane. So they never get it from a curved surface. That is the destruction of the globe right there.
Any comments from any of the panel in this regard? Okay, so next question that was asked to ChatGPT by 10th Man in this regard was what
Perplexity, not ChatGPT.
Perplexity, my bad. What is the relationship between celestial equator and Earth's equator?
The answer is the celestial equator and the Earth's equator are on the same plane. And the celestial equator is an abstract projection of this terrestrial equator into outer space. Due to Earth's axial tilt, the celestial equator is inclined by about 23.4 degrees with respect to the ecliptic, which is the plane of the Earth's orbit. The celestial equator intersects another useful great circle, the ecliptic. The celestial equator is defined to be infinitely distant so that the ends of the semicircle always intersect the horizon due east and due west, regardless of the observer's position on Earth. An observer standing in the Earth's equator visualizes the celestial equator as a semicircle passing through the zenith, a point directly overhead. As the observer moves north or south, the celestial equator tilts towards the opposite horizon. At the poles, the celestial equator coincides with the astronomical horizon. Now, the astronomical horizon is basically your eye line horizon that the bubble section would give you.
52 people watching, please smash that share button if you've not done so already. Warm welcome to all of you who've joined us so far. I know we're only 10 or 15 minutes into the live show, but it'd be nice to have 100 people watching, as always. Any comments from the panel in regards to the, again, description of an equator outside edge of a ball if you're reifying the heliocentric model into the ground that you're standing on as being on the same plane? The equator for a ball isn't a plane.
No one from Discord even.
Clearly. Okay, well.
Anyway, said that's a problem for them because their surface is supposed to be curved.
Okay, let's move on. Next, we've got, can the celestial equator be seen from Earth?
The answer from Perplexity AI with the references says the celestial equator is an imaginary circle on the celestial sphere that is on the same plane as the Earth's equator. It is an abstract projection of the terrestrial equator into outer space, and it is a plane of reference in the equatorial coordinate system. The celestial equator is defined to be infinitely distant, so the ends of the semicircle always intersect the horizon due east and due west, regardless of the observer's position on Earth. An observer standing on the Earth's equator visualizes the celestial equator as a semicircle passing through the zenith, the point directly overhead. As the observer moves north or south, the celestial equator tilts towards the opposite horizon. At the poles, the celestial equator coincides with the astronomical horizon. Astronomical objects near the celestial equator appear above the horizon from most places on Earth, but they culminate, reach the meridian highest near the equator. Therefore, the celestial equator can be seen from Earth.
Right.
So when they project the extension from the Earth's equator, it's a flat, larger disk that goes infinitely into the celestial sphere. Anything below that, you can't see those stars. Anything above that are the stars you see. And so it's like you standing outside and waiting for the stars to move so that you could see more stars. But they're saying that there's this celestial equator that is preventing any of the stars to be seen from below because they want to assume orbits and everything else. Whereas we know it's the stars that are moving, not the Earth.
Shout out to Jardo again, who's gifted 10 memberships. And Chronicles of the Cats, I think it's called. I'm sure that's Bobby Zines. Chronicles of the Unconvinced is one of the show names that Bobby Zines has, although his channel names changed subsequently. He's picked up a free membership, one of the 10. So welcome to all of you who picked up a channel membership. After the show's finished recording, you can watch the Uncut and After show, or any clips that I make when they come out before the general public does. If, on the other hand, you weren't fortunate enough to pick up a free membership, then you can subscribe to my second channel, where 2 or 3 days later, you can watch the same show that the members watched, but a bit later. So you still get all the same material. It's not stuck behind a paywall. You just get it in advance if you're a member. So check that out. Lots of new members. Welcome, one and all. Okay.
Hey, real quick, I want to share something with you guys. You know, I would like to share my family situation. So this morning, my wife is telling my daughter how to get something from the tube. She said, "See, that's the wonderful thing about gravity." My daughter looks at me like, "Don't say nothing, Dad." And I said, "You mean the density of the liquid, of the viscous liquid in there? When you hold it upside down, it falls down to the cap so that it can easily be squeezed out like you do toothpaste." And my wife rolls my eyes, and the first thing she says, "You and y'all make me sick." And I just laugh at her, you know. So she knows I'm telling the truth, but you know, out of habit, she says things like that. That's the wonderful thing about gravity. Just hold it upside down, and the stuff comes down to the bottom.
I mean, I don't want to sound like I'm being argumentative with you, D-Rose, but in a colloquial sense, often these terms get bandied around, and I don't mind. when someone does that. Now, the issue, you have to clarify, why would D. Rose in this circumstance have an issue with gravity? Well, it's because up until a high school level, you're taught that it's a force holding you to the side of a spinning water ball. Now, the displacement of solids or liquids in air being described as gravity, as opposed to its weight in air, is fine. The idea that it's a bent fourth-dimensional pseudo-Riemannian space-time as a result of the uneven distribution of mass invented by Einstein, or a force holding you to a ball because of a falsely ascribed to Newton mass-attracting mass force, is absurd. But it doesn't alter that we do have this description that's been hijacked, where things that are more dense than the air that surround it will go down. In most circumstances, not all. There are exceptions to that, even that quote-unquote rule. But when people ascribe the word gravity to it, fine, whatever.
Okay.
Yeah,
So colloquially, it's fine. Okay. Got it. Well, I think it goes back to what Brian or either Refractive told me. It's this thing called, I think it was Refractive said, there's a certain kind of gravity. I think he's called the specific gravity or something. I don't know what he had. It was like some type of adjective before the word gravity, which was hijacked relative density differential. But I get it. I know colloquially, yeah. All right. That's why she rolled the odds at me. It was warranted.
Even the way she was using it, I'm sure she was just trying to describe movement in the vertical with respect to the horizontal.
Exactly.
Right.
And that is shorthand gravity, isn't it? No issue. I've got no issue with the word. I don't care what you call things falling through air. If you shorthand want to call it gravity, no worries. What's that? But that means I'm held to the side of a ball that's flying through a sky vacuum. No, it does not. But that's the issue. That's where we take umbrage, not with the colloquial use. So it's also true with science, right? To a vast extent, it's been so abused by the people who indoctrinate us into belief that we're on a spinning water ball that average Joe will describe maths as science. All the time. It happens all the time. Almost every video, every second video I watch will have somebody falsely ascribe valor to their maths with science. And that's just how the world is. And you can fight, you have to pick your battles. Basically, D, is what I'm trying to drive at here. Pick your battles. Sometimes it's just not worth it.
I know. I get it.
So in the image,
hold on, because I get called a hyper analytical, pedantic, hyper specificity prick.
Yeah, me too.
What you just said validated that.
I'm saying do as I say, not as I do, because I'm no different, But that it's just for the audience.
Hey, just let it go, guys. You need a flat plane for it anyway.
Just let it go. 5,000 flat Earth debates later. Yeah, man, just let it roll.
So the second picture under this question, can the celestial equator be seen from Earth? The blue one, do you see that one, Nathan?
Yes.
Okay. Well, if you click on that, it'll get bigger. And you can see here that for the coordinate system for that plane, they use the vernal equinox as shown at the bottom right, and it's 0 degrees. And it meets the ecliptic and the celestial equator at 0 degrees. Someone's got their mic open. So at this point is how they get their star maps. So they need this plane all the way, a flat plane in their space. Okay, I'm not saying I agree with that, but they just need a plane. And the time of year they use it to catalog the stars has to be at the vernal equinox, where Earth tilt is negated. So there's no Earth tilt, there's no any of that. All it is a plane. And then they catalog all the stars in relationship or reference to that plane. And that's throughout the rest of the year until, again, it doesn't matter. They always go by that reference. So when it goes to 23.4 north, as they say, which is really just the sun moving, not the Earth tilt, they still go back to the 0 plane that they need, that plane. So John's right.
Another shout out to Jardo, big spender. He says, nothing like gifting memberships to flush out the closet flat earthers. Thank you for the super chat, Jardo. And for all the memberships you've gifted.
And I got one.
Good morning, guys.
You, Mr. Akamano.
Hey, Choco.
Good morning, Choco.
Right, so next question. No tilt to Earth on vernal equinox. Your
answer.
Good.
Okay, answer. During the vernal equinox, the Earth's axis is not tilted towards or away from the sun, which means that the perceived center of the sun's disk is at the same plane as the Earth's equator. This means that the subsolar point, the point on the Earth's surface where the sun is directly overhead at noon, is on the equator. Therefore, the length of day and night is nearly equal at all latitudes. The equinoxes are caused by the fact that the Earth's axis is tilted by 23.5, but it's really 4. But during the equinoxes, the tilt's orientation with respect to space does not change during the year. So they have to throw in some falsity here. But basically, the reference, the coordinate system that they use as a reference is the vernal equinox, where Earth tilt is negated. You have one solid plane that you get all your angles from for the cataloging of the stars, because now you're going to star map as the reference rather than the Earth. And that's the RA and DEC, the system, versus the horizontal coordinate system, which is alt-as, which is observer-based. So right here, it's telling you the sun is directly over what they call the equator, this flat plane, and that's the time they catalog everything. And it's based on that reference, not when it's doing its southerly movement in the sky in the winter towards Capricorn or Cancer in the north.
They also ascribe a causal relationship to the apologetic that they make after the fact. So to back engineer the movements that they've observed in the stars, they ascribe this tilt. But in the description that the AI gave you, unless I'm very much mistaken, it said the cause was the tilt. You're like, no, that's how you've back engineered your model to work with what you've observed, as opposed to a causal influencer. But that's what it said. It said, I'm sure it said cause.
No, it says the equinoxes are caused by the fact that the Earth's axis is tilted by 23.5 degrees.
Right,
Yeah,
right.
you're right.
Even the AI uses telling language.
It's a cool story.
Yeah, well, it's fact. That's the telling language, because of the fact.
We're talking about shadows, right? So we're talking about the sun moving throughout the day when it's directly overhead. It's the least shadow you're going to get because it's directly overhead. But as it moves away from you, it's casting shadows longer and longer up until it goes far enough away to where we call it sunset. The afternoon shadows are very long from trees on an open field, but at noontime they're not long at all because the sun's directly. So the sun is moving, but they're trying to say the opposite.
I just had a secret message from Jardo. I haven't really, I'm making it up, but he said that in exchange for all those free memberships, he insists that you all smash the share button if you haven't done so already, so that the 77 people watching who've joined as a direct result of the call to action earlier, where I asked people to share. Thank you very much for joining. If you've hit one of those links that have been shared out by all the good people who are watching, and a very warm welcome if you've just got here. Please share the show if you haven't done so already. Next question.
What is the vernal equinox and how does it differ from the autumnal equinox? The answer is the vernal equinox and the autumnal equinox are two significant points in the Earth's orbit around the sun, making the beginning of spring and autumn, respectively. Here's how they differ. So that's what they're saying it is. So the vernal equinox, also known as the spring equinox, it occurs around March 21st in the northern hemisphere. On the vernal equinox, the Earth's axis is not tilted towards or away from the sun, resulting in nearly equal amount of daylight and darkness at all latitudes. The subsolar point, to the point on the Earth's surface where the sun is directly overhead at noon, is on the equator during the vernal equinox. It makes a start of spring in the northern hemisphere. The autumnal equinox, also known as the fall equinox, it occurs around September 22nd in the northern hemisphere. Like the vernal equinox, the Earth's axis is not tilted towards or away from the sun during the autumnal equinox, resulting in a nearly equal amount of daylight and darkness at all latitudes. The subsolar point is on the equator during the autumnal equinox, just like during the vernal equinox. It marks the start of autumn in the northern hemisphere. In summary, the vernal equinox and the autumnal equinox are 2 points in the year when the Earth's axis is not tilted towards or away from the sun, resulting in nearly equal amounts of daylight and darkness in all latitudes. Vernal equinox marks the beginning of spring, while the autumnal equinox marks the beginning of autumn. And they suggest some other questions if you want to go. But that was enough for me because, see, the sun has a circuit and it moves 365 days. It goes to its highest point and then crosses the equator and then goes to its lowest point and then comes back around for the vernal equinox, making it a year. It's the sun moving. They're trying to say it's the Earth spinning.
Right. And it's adjusted with tilt other than at this point where it matches. And then that's where they take all the mapping as reference points from, right? This is the only point that it works, isn't it?
Yeah, well, that's the tell. If you're going to say we're going to map the sky and know where the stars are always by an angle measurement, but we got to wait until the vernal equinox where there is no tilt, so we can work from a plane that matches the equatorial plane, the terrestrial one of the Earth, because we got to extend it to the celestial sphere with the celestial equator, which is imaginary. Yeah, they got to wait for that day where everything is based on the plane and you get your angles to stars, and that's the catalog they go by, no matter what
at that
time
point
of year.
you've got the sun essentially at 90 degrees to the position, and the position in this respect is going to be the minimum elevation angle measurement to Polaris. So at the point that those two overlap, this is something that Brian's been trying to communicate with me. It's only just starting to make sense to me, to be honest. But that's the point that the two overlap, which is why they, at the point of conjunction, or the point that they converge, or whatever you'd call it, when you've got the sun directly overhead, at the point that if you were measuring an angle to Polaris, it would be at its minimum, otherwise known as the equator. Well, it has to be. That's just the two overlap points for two flat plane systems to work in conjunction with one another, isn't it?
Yeah, well, it has to be because latitudes are measured from the center of Earth, not from the surface. So if you go to the equator,
yes, but
zero is the equator.
Right, exactly. So you need it to be overhead at that point for all of the timings to make sense. But but they're cross-referenced to that in all instances, and then the way they adjust for it in the model is to tilt the Earth itself, because obviously in that model we're not stationary and measuring angles to Polaris off a flat plane. We're on a edge of a ball tilted towards the sun, or not in this instance, because it's at the equinox.
Yeah, just for the listener, all you got to do is realize they've never used a curved surface to achieve an angle because they can't. And they've always cited it needs to be a plane. Well, that's a tell.
Quick shout out to Jardo again. One second.
Tell.
Just shout out to Jardo, who says, don't forget the cause and effect relationship according to heliocentrism is the northern winter is caused by a closer sun. Again, these are apologetics after the fact, Jardo. So they tilt the Earth in terms of this is it's Kepler's, right? It's Kepler's elliptical orbits is what you're describing. You're saying that based on the system that Kepler infers, you've got the sun in the model further away from the northern hemisphere in the summer, right? Based on their tilt. And the only reason that you've got that system with elliptical orbits is because of Easter. So Kepler's task is to figure out when a particular alignment's going to fall next year, so that they can say next year Easter will be on this date, whatever it is, one weekend after the full moon that precedes it, or something like that. Well, there's a certain star alignment that comes before that point that sets the date for Easter. Well, the models that they were using with circular orbits to predict the movement of the stars didn't quite work for Easter. So they kept getting it wrong. The church kept getting it wrong. So they needed a better system. So the elliptical orbit is developed by Kepler, so that by mapping out the trajectory in that fashion, they got a better predictive capability for when that alignment would come, so that they could say Easter's going to be on this day, and it would be correct, rather than them saying to the people, Easter's going to be on this day, and then it comes around 8 months later, because they predicted it when they predicted it, and the alignment hasn't come yet, so it's going to be one full week after that because it's or even one full month because it's the first full moon, then the following Sunday after that. So if the star alignment hasn't happened and then there isn't a full moon, it could be a massive chunk of time before then and the next Easter. They could be massively out, in other words. So hence, elliptical orbits are born. But that doesn't mean, it's like earlier when they're ascribing the tilt to being the cause. It's like, no, trying to figure out how to best predict where the stars are going to be in a year's time doesn't mean that Earth is moving in an elliptical orbit when Kepler comes up with that way of fathoming what he's looking at to make a better prediction. Doesn't mean we're in an elliptical orbit. Doesn't mean we're further away from this. That's meaningless. Just one man who's saying maybe if we describe it like this, we'll get a better idea of what will happen in the future in terms of where those stars will be. That's all it means. Doesn't mean we're moving in Go on.
Say from a flat plane.
Yeah.
I kept on wanting to say from
exactly.
a flat plane.
Yeah, that's the common denominator is the flat plane for sure. Hey, Adam, are you there? I want to get Adam on this.
Yeah,
Adam. So Passover is really Easter. Easter is Passover, right? So the whole point that Jews were using a lunar method for Passover, right? But when you use the sun, you're going to have a difference, right?
Yeah, so Passover's different each year, isn't it? Because you are using the phases of the moon to determine it, as opposed to the more Christian way of arranging the calendar, which was to just remove that Judaic way of viewing things and move to just the passage of the sun to be the telling of time. Hence the need to convert. Hence why Easter moves still.
Did you all follow that? Yeah, we all followed that. Adam's really good. Yeah, he is, isn't he? He's even put a diagram up.
Well, just put that up for what the super chat was about, just so you've got that description there on, so you can just see the claim, you know.
Right. When you extrapolate out the Kepler maths for ellipses and then model it and describe with a physicality to Earth the positional value of Earth versus the sun, this is what you get. And as Jardot said, further away in summer.
But that would be calculating the angles from the sun. If the sun was a flat plane and the Earth was a ball spinning around it, it's just reversing the calculation. Instead of having Earth as the flat plane and the sun being a ball spinning around it, just a reversal.
Right. So what you're saying is this elliptical motion described, or as we are describing it, would actually be the plane of reference.
Well, that red line that cuts through the middle of it is a dead giveaway usually.
Right. Okay, cool.
So they've reversed everything is the point. But when it comes to if you're going to jump into this topic and do some good research, you're going to find out they need a plane for everything. And the globe is surplus to requirement because you can't get an elevation angle from a curved surface. So it's the end of the globe.
Cool. I can imagine that probably took several hours.
It's the end of the globe as we know it.
Well, we're going to
back
carry
to you,
on.
Chocolate. That was the William Tell overture. That was the Tell.
Okay, we're going to get back into this video. So we are going to do a bit of horrendous mic work from Astronavigation for Beginners. So as is always the case with any videographer that we cover, please let this videographer know at Nathan Oakley 1980 sent me. Don't knock his mic. Don't knock the 60 hertz transformer buzz that's coming through his audio. Just let him know we responded.
Don't hate on his mic skills, man. Just because you're nice with it.
That's just simple geometry. Think about it. This is just one line, right? These two lines are parallel to each other. This is parallel to this, obviously, because they're coming from infinity, right? That's what we discussed earlier. So if these two lines are parallel.
What you discussed when he told you weren't making any assumptions. Remember that assumption I told you to make? No, not 93 million miles. Infinite. So it's parallel. Remember that assumption I told you to assume when we weren't assuming stuff? Yeah. Moving on.
Then this angle has got to be equal to this angle.
Pay attention to Brian's logic. Brian is pointing out at the moment, and rightly so, that this assumption that he's just told you to employ, when you take it away from them with bad moon shadow or anything else that destroys their parallel light rays, the whole kit and caboodle falls apart at this point. Now, Brian's right to be banging that drum. It's important to understand how the claim distances are eradicated when you take the moon and what it can do with shadows, like described here with Eratosthenes, how it eradicates their notions of infinite distances, let alone the heliocentric distances.
Right?
No,
Now,
it doesn't quite do that. What it does is it destroys the pre-assumption they make through Eratosthenes first. Because Eratosthenes' initial statement is to say it is either big and very far away or small and local. And that's what measuring it will be. It can be one of these two things if we interpret the results like this. That's what he's saying, which is why when the bad moon shadow comes in, it's small and local, giving exactly the same as big and far away with their assumptions. And that's what destroys Eratosthenes for me. He can't move on because his own determinative logic that he's set up has been demonstrated to be false by a different luminary.
Sure, but where Brian steps in there is to say that their assumption must hold true for the light to be parallel, and by demonstrating the local shadow, bad moon shadow example, you're eradicating their notion that must hold true for an infinite distance to have parallel light.
So with the assumption of parallel light, can you get an angle from a curved surface?
No. You're going to need a flat earth for that angle, regardless of if the light's parallel or not.
Nathan, I put up 3 pictures of Master B that I've been putting up in sequence of this video for this very topic.
Indeedy weedy on screen now.
Okay.
In terms of what the last one represents is a hotspot, if you want to call it that, above the sun. So in the dog cam footage, that's where the sun is. You can see the light coming down in crepuscular, or however you say the word, rays from the sun. But directly beneath it, you've got one hotspot. Well, this, if you were standing beneath these clouds, the sun would be described as being at your zenith, 90 degrees to your position. If you're lying on your back, it would be directly above you if you look up. Well, that notion of having infinitely distant light with the light rays all coming in straight, look, there you go. It's there. It's right in front of your very eyes. That is absolutely not the case. But it must hold true for them to transpose, as John just pointed out, a curved surface that won't give you an angle to the equatorial plane. That's what all this bullshit's about. But look, use your eyes. You know, right before your very eyes now on screen. This is not what we have. We don't have parallel light. Go ahead, Chocolate.
I always thought that dog cam footage with that hot spot right underneath the sun was a little weird, being that we're shown these cartoons of the entire side of the Earth being covered by the sun in one shot.
Well, that's the point. No one's ever seen parallel light. We only see diverging light, and the other 2 pictures show it. And then the hot spot is the GP of the sun. But as you said, Chocolate, if it's so big and so far away, and this parallel light is hitting the Earth, why is that such a tight GP of the sun directly over that part of the Earth?
Yeah, it's definitely not very far away. But I still it's weird. That sighting is weird to me. It doesn't make a lot of sense. It's just like it feels like my eyes are playing tricks on me. I'm not saying that it was a trick footage, just that it's really strange that you're seeing that right there. Like,
well, Armin, are you not just
shouldn't even be there at all like that? Like, it's just really strange that it looks like that.
Yeah, but on Earth,
it doesn't work with the heliocentric model. I'll give you that.
Good, but on Earth, when the sun is, when you're under those clouds on Earth, if those clouds were removed, that would cast very little shadow on the tree that it's directly over. As the sun moves on its circuit, then you're going to see the angles that the shadow of the tree casts, because the sun is moving to cause that shadow. So this is the GP of the sun. This is exactly how it all works.
Yeah, but why is there a specific light spot on the clouds like that? That's really strange.
Why is it strange? It's a local, smaller sun, obviously, compared to a big.
Sorry, you know
There
what
you
the sun
go.
is. Hold on, this is getting dangerously close to you making some positive claims there, 10th. Sorry, small and local. What is it exactly?
Well,
Are
when
you
you
planning a literal spotlight?
well,
With-
let me.
I mean-
I'll try. As Chocolate said, if I'm contrasting it to their big and far, it should be one light, one of these what do you call it, spots, the whole Earth. But obviously, we're only looking at this as a very small spot on the Earth. So I'm contrasting to what they're saying, big and far, to small and local.
We
That's
don't
what
need
I'm
to.
saying.
Falsification doesn't require replacement.
That's fine, but that's what
maybe that little
Alright, that's
spot
my
is maybe that little spot is half the Earth.
I don't know why there's a little spot at all. Why, like, even with the local sun, that doesn't make any sense to me. It just makes it look like it's a spotlight. What? Very weird to me.
Well, the question that we need to ask the ball earthers is how do they model that hotspot, given that they claim that all light rays are parallel? Someone model that out, like, get your rumpus drawing, your orthographic drawing, put your sun in. Remember to put it relatively to scale, so the sun's massive and the Earth's tiny, and all the rays are parallel. Somebody model how that hotspot gets caused if all the rays are parallel, and they'll start drawing non-parallel lines, and then start putting it like.
Right. Well, that's my point. It definitely doesn't make any sense in a heliocentric model, but that doesn't. We know, like, why the hell it even looks like that.
It debunks their model, but they just don't accept it.
That would be the tangent plane. If you were standing in the center of that hot spot, that would be the tangent plane.
Oh, it's a tangent point. It's not a hot spot. Good one. It's not. It's not a hot spot. It's the tangent point. It's God saying, "It is here."
Genus point.
It's tangent point.
I can't make it make any sense in any model, really, but it definitely doesn't make sense in a heliocentric model. That's my position.
Okay, we covered that. Let's move on. Astronavigation for beginners.
Eratosthenes now knew how far he sent this guy, right? So let's say he sent him, I'm not going to go into the specifics, but let's say he sent him a distance of, I don't know, let's say X miles, right? And told him, go X miles away from this well and observe the sun when I tell you to, okay?
I'm going to spin past this. It's just making this
up. This is the Earth's surface. You see that? X miles on the Earth's surface corresponds to this angle A. So then all he had to do was ask himself, well, there's 360 degrees in the circle, right? So
angle on the surface.
Yeah.
He just said angle on the surface.
Yeah,
he's done.
Yep, there isn't one.
Angle A degrees corresponds to X miles. How much does 360 degrees correspond to?
Yeah, that's the measurement of your 1 degree giving you 60 nautical miles. Why is that? Well, because the movement of the Polaris that's used to give you the grid that you're referencing would decrease at that rate. As you move away from Polaris, yeah, the measurement that you take through the protractor decreases. That's to say that Polaris drops towards the horizon 1 degree as you back away from it 60 nautical miles. Well, that measurement taken off a flat plane is now being described as the turning of the ball Earth and not the protractor taking the measurement from the surface. Now, in order for all of that to work, i.e. for the protractor to become the globe, you need all of the preceding nonsense of parallel light and wells and angles from surfaces that are curved. All this garbage that doesn't make any sense and is mathematically wrong is necessitated to put you in the center of the protractor that you've used to take the measurement in the first place and call that protractor the globe.
Right? So that's
That
just
checks out.
360 into x divided by a. And if you do that, you get the circumference of the Earth. Because
what you're actually doing is measuring declination of a star that doesn't move as you back away from it till it disappears over the horizon. That's what you've actually done. Then you've called that transposition to the center of a globe Earth the rotating of a globe Earth.
360 degrees, if you went around like this 360 degrees, you'd be going around the entire Earth once. Let me show that again. This is important. An angle A, right, if it corresponds to this much on the Earth's surface, and you know that this is also angle A.
Go on.
Yeah, he's saying angle from the Earth's surface. He's detailing a flat plane. So if the flat plane at this angle is different from the flat plane at this angle, then it's a ball.
Yes, that's precisely what he's saying. Good summary.
By geometry, right? All you got to do to find out, so this is x, right? So all you got to do to find out this entire distance, right, is just do some simple proportional mathematics. So 360 degrees. This angle x, sorry, this distance x on the Earth's surface, we say in technical terms, subtends an angle A at the Earth's center. This distance x subtends some angle at the Earth's center, which we call A. All right? So,
So, the globe Earth is your protractor, you're in hell at the molten iron core, and the angles that weren't angles because they were coming from curves are actually going to relate to the center of Earth with you taking the angle from hell. All makes sense because the light's infinitely distant, coming in parallel, and we can translate the angle that came from a curve that you couldn't measure, in reality taken from a flat plane, down to the center of the ball that has now become the protractor, with you standing in hell. Simple as that. I mean, it only took 15 minutes of a second part of 4 videos to get to this stage where we can now talk about being on a flat plane but in the middle of a protractor, a mean globe Earth.
if you want to know how much the entire Earth is, right, you just do some proportional maths. This whole thing is 360 degrees. A is some fraction of that, right, which corresponds to this distance x. So all you got to do if you want to find out the circumference of the Earth is equal to 360 multiplied by x divided by A. That's it. And then you
It
have the
seems like
circumference
he's
of the Earth.
describing how far away the stars are in his mind, and then changing how far away the stars are to the surface of Earth and making the stars infinite in his
Correct.
own mind.
If I take an angle with a protractor to Polaris and then back away from it and take a note of how many miles that is, and then I keep doing it and it keeps remaining the same, every time I take a measurement, I've taken a 1 degree measurement off a flat plane of that star dropping towards the horizon. If I take all those measurements and then say, right, okay, when I get to the limit, I can extrapolate that data out of a flat Earth measurement to the Polaris star that's now at the horizon, and say that each of those 1 degrees I measured off a flat plane are actually 1 degree of a turn of a sphere Earth. Yeah, that's what he's doing. That's what this is. That's all the swindle is.
Earth. And if you have the circumference of the Earth, you can then calculate the radius of the Earth, because you know that the circumference is just equal to 2 pi r. So if you find the circumference, you can find the radius. And so that's how Eratosthenes calculated the radius of the Earth
using a flat plane
and its circumference. Or rather, first he did the circumference, and
he first needed to measure angles off a flat plane, and then he needed to transpose it by turning the angles he measured off a flat plane into curve angles that aren't angles, and then saying that now we've got a flat plane in the middle, of the ball Earth that's actually the protractor we used in the first instance when measuring angles off a flat plane. But if we take all the light to be parallel, all hitting at the same line across Earth, when in reality we don't see that with light, then the ball Earth works if I take it to be the protractor. Easy peasy, lemon squeezy.
And from there he inferred the radius of the...
The other thing he has to do, Nathan, is he has to use and apply Euclidean geometry to be able to then perform some sums. They call it trigonometry, which means that when people like fight the flat Earth, for example, they want to apply bendizontal and curved straight line for reasons like, I don't know, when they talk about level, it means that you can't do that, because if Eratosthenes is applying trigonometrical sums to give him numbers that he then transposes onto a globe model, well, you can't have it both ways. You're either using Euclidean geometry in one instance, therefore negating the use of non-Euclidean geometry in the other, or you're using non-Euclidean geometry in the other instance, and that negates Eratosthenes. Either way, both cannot be true simultaneously at the same time.
Well, they're not, are they? I mean, you got it right in terms of the statement of truth in the first instance, which is their use of the rhetoric and geometry, which is held true in all of their mathematics. That would be having straight lines be straight. When you say they can't have it both ways, you're talking about the nonsense and lies from people like Craig. That would be convicted, violent, criminal, woman beater Craig McNeil of the Flat Earth channel, who doesn't sit in line with the geometric principles of things like horizontal being a straight line. They want to bend it, even though their geometry then bends and fails as a result of their lies. But ultimately, what we deal with here is the actual rhetoric of the globe Earth in terms of how its geometry is utilising a flat plane, not bendizontal, as would be disseminated to an audience by convicted violent offenders who beat women with offensive weapons, like Craig McNeil of the Flat Earth channel on screen now.
But ultimately that is the paradox, isn't it? Like, because if you believe that we're on a sphere because you change the meaning of the word level from a straight line to a curved line so that you can change the geometry, then it means that you can't have Eratosthenes, because that negates him. And that's what they've got to do. They'll have it, but they'll argue it both ways depending on which argument they're having. And when it's pointed out to them, they'll pretend that the contradiction doesn't exist. They'll just ignore it.
Well, the contradiction lies in the point that we're pointing out that precedes that, though, which is to say that at the point in his example, he's stating explicitly that he's getting 90 degrees from a curved surface. Well, that leaves you with a cognitive break, because it's not a straight line giving you an angle that is required in order to do this geometry. Now, in the geometry, we know it's straight, and that's what geometry is in this regard when you talk about the Euclidean principle that you've highlighted. But what they do is see that in order for it to work, like with Al-Biruni as a more simplistic example, Al-Biruni takes a flat Earth and gets the height of the mountain with basic trig. Great. But then he goes up the mountain and bends the surface that he used flat to get the height of the mountain. Well, what that leaves you with cognitively is bendizontal. Now, that's an adverse effect that anti-flat earthers and woman beaters like Craig McNeil will have to face as a cognitive break, because they're violating their own geometric principle when they tell you that they're getting 90 degrees from a curve. So they say, well, you can get 90 from a curve, it's curvizontal. No, you can't.
Nobody claimed the ground underneath the mountain is curved.
Yeah, when Al-Biruni's measuring it to get the height, and it must be flat for him to do the triangles, to do the trig, to get the height, then nobody's claiming it's curved. Even though he's going to go up the mountain and say that it's curved when he derives a radius from the curved surface that was flat when measuring the height. That leaves them, cognitively, with a break that says, bendizontal then. No, just lies about a globe Earth and actual flat Earth measurements. But as I say, if you're a woman beater and a convicted violent criminal described by a judge as outrageously violent, like Craig McNeil, that cognitive break will make its way to your audience as just outright deceit. But what do you expect from a woman beater, Anthony?
Indeed, but let's just do a full stop in a new paragraph for 1 minute. When I was listening to this guy talking, this Indian guy talking yesterday, it was like deja vu, but not not my own experience. He was describing his video is basically worded as though he's watched our show, and he's almost responding word for word, point by point to the things that we say. It was almost preordained that he had to respond in that way. And I was thinking, how old is this video? And I thought, it's as if he wrote this video yesterday or a week ago, and it's 2 years ago. And then it dawned on me, maybe it's possible that we're not necessarily living in a parallel universe, but he wrote this video for somebody else that's not us, but similar to us, that was working on the same angle, the same attack line that we're dealing with now. Maybe he's responding to somebody just like us, but in an earlier world, where they were at the same point that we're at right now. And he was literally responding to them. And I'm looking at the parallels thinking, it's almost like he's talking directly to us, but 2 years ago couldn't have been us. But maybe it was somebody else that was in the same journey that we're in right now, has realized the nonsense, and he's talking in a parallel world. Did anybody else get that feeling?
Are you high right now?
Honestly, when you get that feeling of deja vu, it's a weird feeling that you can't
Please don't
describe.
repeat it. Please, God, please spare us. Please don't repeat it all.
Classic response, Nathan. Love it.
Well, on that note, I'm going to say a huge, massive, enormous thank you to both Discord and G+ Pals. If you're watching on either Nathan Oakley 1980 or Nathan Oakley premiering streams, then stay tuned, as there will be an after show to follow.
Look, I got other ones that say the same thing.
Hey everyone, is Aaron back?
Hey, Ryan.
He's coming back. Yeah.
Well, just on Erotos. Sorry, Chocolate.
Well, before you go, what's up, Irish? What's up, Irish? What minute mark are you on, Nathan?
15:32.
Okay. Oh, go on, Brian. Sorry.
Okay, always. I can't. Yeah, I meant to get in at the end of the live show. The determining factor of what type of a distance that Eratosthenes measured comes down to the unit he measured with. So if he measured, like he's measuring 7.24 degrees, right? So how does he translate that into a distance, right? 7.24 degrees. If he's claimed to have been using stadia, is stadia a curved distance? Because if you take statuate miles, a statuate mile is a horizontal distance. And this is the killer for the ballers. When they start trying to say, nautical miles are a curved mile, it's absolute nonsense. How do you convert a curved distance into a straight line distance when a straight line distance existed as the distance of measurement before the claimed curved distance? The statuate mile existed before the nautical mile, and the nautical mile is transferred into the statuate mile. But the stadia existed before the statuate mile. So when people are creating a unit of distance and measurement, why would they create a curved distance? They wouldn't. It would always be presumed to be a straight line distance. So if you have 500 of those stadia, which would have to be a straight line distance, right, there is no way for it to be curved. Now, I know that's kind of like, but he measured an angle, so he didn't, I know, but our opposition don't understand this basic fact. Anything you're going to convert into a statuate mile, a nautical mile, kilometer, or anything, you're dealing with a straight line. And the same for stadia. So how did he convert 7.24 degrees to a distance? If he's, what unit? What's going on with the unit? The unit has to be a straight line. You know what I mean? How do you? What's a foot? Is a foot slightly curved? Is there a little bit of curve in an inch? No, it's a straight line. So there's no way for him to have measured a curve distance.
Only if it curves in a straight way, Brian.
Only if your inch curves in a straight way. Well, that's absolutely absolutely.
Straight up from a point that's close to the Earth at funny angles, all these different angles. Celestial navigation absolutely does not work.
Thank you, Prof. Bob.
Now, I'm going to post a video, Brian. You're going to love this, and it's actually was our next video after this guy. This was another, but you're just going to do a segment of this because Bad Moon Shadows is about to be linked here. So let me post it, and then Brian, you're going to love this.
Okay.
But this is our next video, but I'm going to play a segment of it, so don't play the whole thing. All right. So let me post it for you, tell you what minute mark, and you won't have to go far. And then Bad Moon Shadow shows up. Be right back.
We just got silence.
Well, I
said be right back. I'm trying to copy and paste. My goodness.
I'll fill in. Yeah, well, on this guy's, this Indian man, on his videos, that turned up, Bad Moon Shadow turned up immediately because he started having to claim that light from the sun is parallel. And then claim light from the stars are parallel. It's like, the origin of that is that the sun is so big and far away.
Yeah.
At a certain distance to match its angular size, but it's so big, we supposedly receive parallel light rays, or almost parallel light rays. But in their paradigm, the moon is small and local in comparison to in heliocentric terms, let's just say. But yet the moon gives us the exact same shadows, and within their model, their model has the moon at the exact size and distance that it would give us, that it would give a globe Earth the exact same shadows. With divergent light. So that means they don't have a claim.
Well,
so
here we go.
As soon as someone says that, it's over. Because they don't have a claim to start with.
I got it for you. Again, another one in the archives waited to be played. But go ahead, start it at mark 2133, and you won't go, he'll bring it up by the 25th minute, I believe, 26th minute. It's short.
It's a little bit smaller there. From the satellite, some of it's coming straight down. Actually, if you're standing right here, let's put Joe here, standing right here. Here's Joe. He looks straight up and sees the satellite straight over his head. And that satellite light, actually let's put Joe standing, he's lying down there. Let's put him standing up, right there on the surface of the Earth. Okay, there's Joe. Right over his head, he looks straight up, right over his head is the satellite light. That satellite light.
Wow, yeah, I think we got that.
Light is coming down through the top of his head, down through his body, through his feet, and continuing, if it could continue, like a gamma ray or something, that light would continue right to the center of the Earth like that. Now, if somebody else is standing over here, up in Bellingham, Puget Sound area, you're here, that light's coming at a funny angle to you. It's not coming straight down on your head. It's not coming parallel to this.
Whoa. What? What happened to parallel light?
This beam of light, it's coming at a funny angle.
No. It's coming to Aristophanes in a parallel manner, all straight and same for everyone, right? Because it's so far away, infinite, right?
Okay. Well, now,
hang on. Just let it play out.
There. He means to say perpendicular, not yeah. It's not coming in perpendicular to the, like it is to the other observer. Still parallel. I can't see it, but that sounds like what he's misspoken.
Yeah.
The angle, instead of being perpendicular to the observer, will be an angle off of it.
I got to interrupt. Listen, don't say anything. Let him set up what he's trying to set up.
Farther out, let's get the satellite that's much higher, or some body that's much farther away. Now, the lines of light are not at such a big angle here to each other. They're getting closer to parallel. Now, let's move this farther out. Let's move this. Well, the first star is 4.24 light years away. 4.24 light years away. That would...
Yeah, repeating it won't change the flat Earth necessity to derive a Kepler-based and Huygens-based R-based assumption to give you those distances based on Einsteinian speeds of light. Saying it twice doesn't alter this garbage of scale that you've just superimposed to give you a very far distance, but certainly not infinite to be parallel.
would be moving this point out almost as far as where the moon is. I mean, it's way farther than the east. I mean, it's in my diagram here. We'd have to move this point, for the Earth being this size, we'd have to move this point as far as the east coast or farther, way out. Now we've got light coming in. We don't have light coming in at weird angles here. We have light coming in from so far away that the light that I see is coming virtually in a line parallel to the light that Joe sees. All the light from that distant body, celestial body, are...
How do you know if something's parallel? What would you reference it to know that it's parallel?
Curved surface. That's where he's messing up. He's trying to explain something, but what he's trying to explain is he's trying to fit reality into his paradigm. So on a globe, on a curved surface, parallel light will give you angled shadows. That's what. But he's messing up. He's not even. He's talking about the light being very far away, forgetting that that light has to be monstrous in size. The star is trying to remember Tycho Brahe. Because the star needs to be monstrous in size for that light to be parallel. Because they're determining that it has to be parallel to start off with, because that's their nonsense involving the sun. Because they need to explain the shadows. So what they need to do is say, right, this star has this angular size. So even though a star is only a point source, it doesn't even really have an angular size. But they'll give it enough of an angular size to make it monstrous. So the light from that star will be hitting the globe out parallel. So it's always pre-assumption based on the shadows.
Brian's absolutely right. But listen, I'm setting this up for the Bad Moon Shadows, which is coming real soon. The whole point is, when I watched this back in the day, you remember a long time ago, Nathan, I said to divergent light, it comes in at funny angles. This is where I got it from this guy. This was several years ago now. So, but what he did at the beginning is not to be forgotten. He said that if the light is close to the Earth, then it's going to come in at funny angles. He said that. And then now he's taken all this time to say, but the light we see is big and far away, so it's coming in parallel. Just keep that in mind and keep playing this video.
Parallel to each other, wherever we are on the surface of the Earth. All those lines of light are parallel. Now that's a bit of an approximation, but they're so close to parallel that we can assume that they are parallel. Okay? So that's how the light from the sun, the planets, the stars, is coming down to the Earth. Parallel lines. If you think of the light as coming from a point that's close to the Earth at funny angles, all these different angles, celestial navigation absolutely does not work. Or...
Pause. Pause. See? It cannot work with divergent rays. He just admitted it. Now, play on. Watch what happens.
10th, does celestial navigation work, though?
Of course it works. Because you have a flat because you have an angle from a flat surface. That's why it works, because the sun is moving. It's not the Earth that's with a curved surface rotating.
Well, this is the appropriate moment for Brighton just to step in and explain how. I know you've just done it literally about 3 minutes ago, but this is the moment to explain Bad Moon Shadow.
Okay, yeah, I'm going to ruin Anthony what he was going to say. I'm sorry, Anthony. I know
sorry, Anthony. My bad as well. I prompted that. Sorry.
Anthony was going to beg the question with them. For a joke, Bad Moon Shadow. The moon, the full moon, works perfectly. Even the phases of the moon work perfectly with a sundial, but the phases need an adding of 48, 49 minutes a day. Whereas the full moon works absolutely perfect, no need to change or add or subtract anything with a sundial. So consequently, right, they even have a moon dial, which is the same thing, but just allows you to add the minutes with the phases. So consequently, within their paradigm, the claim Eratosthenes is claimed to have made is that for us to be on a globe Earth and for the shadows we see in reality to match that, then the sun has to be a very big body at a certain distance. So the distance has to match its angular size, but it starts off with, it needs to be a certain size. So what we receive from that sun on a curved Earth will be almost parallel light, because the light is only barely after diverging between the sun and us, right? Now, that was his claim of how to explain away the elevation angle, because it allowed him to avoid the elevation angle he used to measure horizontal distance and argue about the shadows. He said, if the sun is big and far away, then we receive parallel light from the sun, then we can be on a curved surface. But if the sun is small and local, then that makes the Earth flat.
At funny angles,
that's
all
the
these
claim.
different angles, celestial navigation absolutely does not
video,
work.
Nathan, when I'm talking. Right? That's the claim about Eratosthenes. But if the full moon gives us the exact same shadows, there's no difference whatsoever between the shadows from that and the shadows from the sun, proven by the sundial. So consequently, what they had to do within their model, and I only found this out afterwards, is that Rob Durham pointed it out, that they had to make the moon, their moon, at the right size and distance. So when that divergent light hits their globe Earth, that it gives them the same exact shadows as the parallel light they get from their sun. But the problem with that is this: their claim of the sun being that big and that far away, right, is there to allow them to claim the Earth is curved. But if the moon with divergent light within their model has to give us the same exact shadows, then that means I could claim I'm on a globe Earth and claim that moon is very big and far away and that sun is very small and close. And none of them, nobody on the heliocentric side would argue. Or I could claim both of them are very big and far away with hitting us, with parallel light hitting us, and they can't argue it. Or I could claim that both those celestial bodies are small and local, giving us divergent light over a horizontal plane, and they can't argue it. Perfect. And that's the point.
Perfect,
okay,
perfect.
You'd have to correct
now,
the
Nathan,
angles.
before you go, Nathan, please. I hope you got this cued where he said it cannot work with funny angles. Now, to Anthony, before you play that, because here comes Bad Moon Shadow right after that, okay, which is what Brian did a good job of explaining. So, Anthony, when we see the pictures of diverging light, it is the sun moving away or directly over us, depending where the GP of the sun is, and that works with the angles off of a flat baseline. So the funny angles do not hurt celestial navigation from a plane. Okay, he just said the contrary. He said, if light is coming in at funny angles, celestial navigation doesn't work. In his world, it doesn't, because the Earth has to be curved. It has to come in parallel. But we know there's no evidence of light coming in parallel. In fact, there's evidence that it's divergent, and in celestial navigation could only work with funny light angles if the Earth was a plane. And we all know where they measure anyway from a plane. So you see, it's a lovely bit.
So with divergent light, celestial navigation, would it work? We have divergent light and celestial navigation does work.
Correct.
So way to go, buddy.
Yeah. Now, Bad Moon Shadow coming next.
Is something we don't want to have to do. The only time we correct for this angle, we call this parallax, the only time we correct for it is with the moon. The moon's not quite far enough away to assume it's infinitely far away and the beams of light are parallel. with the moon, we make a simple correction and say, well, it's a little bit too close to make this assumption, so we're going to just nudge the numbers. The table does it for us. We'll just nudge the numbers a little bit to make a simple correction for that. But
nothing to see here. These aren't the drones you're looking for.
Just nudge the numbers. Don't worry about it.
Nudge the numbers.
Overall,
Wow.
celestial, even with the moon, we make this assumption first that the lines of light are parallel, and then we make a slight correction because that assumption, the moon's a little bit too close for that assumption to work perfectly. Okay, parallel angle.
Right, so bad moon shadow. We've preceded it with it. He's now said it. Bad moon shadow. We can demonstrate that what is necessitated for their parallel light with infinitely far away stuff, all giving you the same non-funny angles because they're coming in parallel from an infinite distance. No, the shadows that the moon provide debunk that. The whole thing falls apart. Is there any more in this video, 10th?
No, yeah, we're going to save him for another day where we watch this again because his whole video is there's a lot, but yeah, that's it for today because
Okay,
I don't want you to.
I'll step away for a sec. Good. Talk amongst yourselves.
Yeah, thank you.
No, when you came out with Bad Moon Shadow, I remember this guy, and so it was like perfect for what you discovered, and then this guy saying the same thing. It's like, wow.
Well, what he just said there about nudging the numbers, he doesn't realize. See, this is the thing. This is the kind of point I'm making with the Bad Moon Shadow for people like Neil deGrasse Tyson and others, right? Is that he doesn't realize that mathematically within his paradigm, right, that the moon's light will give them the same effect as parallel light from the sun. Yeah. Right? The angles don't change, they're exactly the same. And he just said we need to nudge the numbers. Well, he doesn't. Within his model, there's no need to nudge the numbers. The numbers are exactly the same, but he doesn't realize that because he thinks the parallel light is only coming from really big things that are far away, like the sun and other stars. Because remember, the sun is the first star. So the sun is our local star. And that's what they base all our star nonsense after that off of, is the pre-assumption of this massive sun. But the sun only is presumed to be big so they can have parallel light to give them shadows on the curved surface. But the same shadows are from the moon, which is a little tiny small local thing in their paradigm. So it's ruined.
But the context in which I want to keep him is his own context. His own context was, if we have this satellite first to use, and if it's close, light's going to come in at a funny angle. And then he made a bold statement. Celestial navigation on a globe, he didn't say it, but that's what he means because he's got a globe, drawn there, cannot work with funny angle light coming in. That's what he was stating. That was clear as mud. Okay. Then he went on to proceed to move the sun further and further away and make it bigger and bigger so that light is coming in as if it was parallel. Not quite, but you could just assume it's parallel. Okay. Then he backtracked. And he says, except for the moon. Now we have a distance issue between the moon's distance, 250 or so thousand miles, versus 93 million miles. He says that moonlight is coming in not parallel. It's coming with these funny angles, but we can do something to fix that. We just nudge it. It's in the tables done for you already. Do you see the flow of this conversation? First, he says funny angles of light discount navigation on the globe's surface. So we're going to make it parallel so that the Earth's surface is curved that allows for these shadows. Then the moon comes into question, and he says, except for the moon, because it does do the funny angles, but we have a fix for that. And they need a plane for both of them.
Well, but the thing is, the part that stood out to me the most was him saying we need to nudge the numbers, which is hilarious, right, for the moon. Because he doesn't realize that within his paradigm, you don't. Because he thinks that these parallel light rays can only come from a massive body, right? But to give them the angles they have. But he doesn't realize that the moon will give them those angles, but it's not a massive body. Because in reality, it does, because the sun and moon aren't massive bodies. I don't know what they are, but they're not these massive bodies that they claim the sun and stars are in our heliocentric paradigm.
That's the obvious that you pointed out, because if a full moon even on a sundial gives you the same thing a sun does on a sundial. That it doesn't matter. One's 93 million or one's 250. That's the same thing.
Now that's as clear as mud.
This is what I'm saying. That's the obvious starting point. So, but he gets himself in the big hole because he says at the beginning, a claim, celestial navigation, meaning on the globe, cannot work without light coming in parallel. He makes that claim. In fact, he says it the opposite way. It cannot work with funny angles. And then we see all the videos and pictures of diverging funny angle lights. Okay, so that's against reality. But even after that, after he goes to the extent of moving the sun way out there, he comes back to the moon and he claims the moon does come in at funny angles. Okay, because it's a closer light. But you've proven, and it's proven, that a full moon and the sun on the sundial or a moon dial cast the same shadows. So it doesn't matter.
Yeah, my argument with this, with the parallel light nonsense that they claim, my argument with that is that's the origin of giving them the curved surface, because that's what allowed them to curve the latitude and longitude grid.
Exactly.
Because that's what Eratosthenes did. He measured a portion of a longitude line, but a horizontal portion because he needed to use the GP of the sun, which was the well. Now, there's no point trying to use the GP of the sun if you're on a curved surface. There's no point in doing that because you can't use. It's not going to be a triangle, right? So he needed to use an elevation angle, which is a right-angle triangle. But to avoid that, he needed to explain away. Now, I don't care whether people say he existed or not. I just have to use the official story. To avoid that, he had to go to the shadows and make up nonsense about if the sun was really big and far away, then we could claim it's curved. So if the sun can't be proven to give this parallel light, and there is no actual evidence for it, which there isn't, proven by the moon, and even within their paradigm, they had to make it so the moon would give them the same shadows, proving that somebody, I don't know who, but somebody knows, or at least someone did know when they came up with those maths, that the moon gives us those same shadows. We're in trouble. Do you know what I mean? So somebody knows it's a swindle. But without that parallel light claim, there is no curved surface. It's gone. Not that there isn't anyway, but the claim can't be made. Sorry.
Well, that's the whole point of them making up parallel light, is to establish a curved surface, which is not true because you can't get an angle from it. And number one, there's no evidence for parallel light. In fact, the evidence shows diverging funny angle lights. And now they're in the corner because of the bad moon shadow. They are done. It's toast now. He just did it. He just said celestial navigation on the globe cannot work with light coming in at funny angles. And yet every corpuscular ray, or as they call it, light, shows the funny angles. The moon on the sundial, full moon, gives you the same shadows, but what's going to make up that distance of 93 million miles in their claim that far and big away? Well, that's gone right there. It's over the minute the moon gives the same shadow.
Yeah, I think that their sun is 860,000 miles in diameter. Do you know what I mean? And that's what it needs to be 93 million miles away and then get the light they need. And to match the angular size we see. Because the same with the moon, their size they give the moon, which is something like 1,000 miles in diameter. It's 1,000 miles in diameter, I think their moon is, or just over 1,000. That matches the angular size exactly. So it's all a back engineering of angular sizes and claims of how different light is coming. But once we point out that the moon gives us the exact same shadow on a sundial, watch them scramble and run, and then come back with, oh well, it does. It works perfect within the heliocentric model, and they start showing us the shadows. They're like, but then you don't have a claim. Right. You can't claim the sun is big and far away now because you can't prove that the moon is not big and far away, or the moon and sun are that kind of thing.
In the book, Kings Dethroned, Hipparchus was the one who said that, according to that book, and no one challenged him on it. Everyone just assumed it was big and far away, so they all went it. No one, and the whole thing is based on that. And Hipparchus in the book came up and said it, and so everything is based on this Jenga cosmology, something built on something that's not true. And so it's lasted all these years. And then you showing that a full moon casts the same shadow 250 some thousand miles away from their so-called paradigm. And as the sun, that's 93 million. Bye-bye. That argument just died.
Well, yeah, I mean, what was that Hipparchus said? Can you remember the quote?
Yeah, I'll pull it up. Give me a minute.
Thank you. I just want to shout out to Adam too, because it was Adam's genius that spotted, well, if the shadows are the same, it'll work with a sundial. I could have been a month before I'd even come up with that. But Adam straight away went sundial. So Adam is responsible also for this.
See, we can share, can't we?
Yeah, even when we don't always agree.
Unless it's Huey don't share with no one. Evidence his argument.
And I know what you were asking earlier, Tony. You were asking, you were going to say, and so we are on a globe, weren't you? You were going to throw in that.
No, I was going to no. So I was going to say that if celestial navigation does not work, because it would require bendy light, but in real world celestial navigation does work, and we have bendy light. It debunks his nonsense. Like you said, he's just that on his model it couldn't work, but it's a double negative what he's saying. If you listen to what he says and apply what he says, it actually debunks the claim of the globe. Because, like you say, he's thinking of it from the globe perspective. But in real world, if you apply what he says, because the celestial navigation works, and because we have straight lines to things and not curved lines, and because trig seems to work, because all these things do work, and the use of Euclidean geometry is there and it works, seems to work, it does debunk the notion that we're on a curved surface. Because if we were on a curved surface, it wouldn't work. But he's got it back to front because he thinks upside down. He has to be a deliberate deceiver. He has to be.
Well,
he's a rumpus.
Well, you could be right, but I get the feeling that the guy actually just doesn't know the difference. Because he has to deal with reality, and what we deal with in reality is light coming in all directions. Loads of divergent light, because that's how light behaves. Like even within their model, they must claim that light is still divergent, or their paradigm, I call it. Light is still divergent. But they have to claim that the sun is so big that the light we're receiving from the sun is almost parallel, as in it's only diverged a little bit. This is their claim. But
then you don't get the hotspot.
Yeah, but see, this is the thing about it. It's like they must claim these things to curve the earth that they believe, to allow them to have the curved earth belief. But the problem with that is that curved earth belief is taken away by the fact that light doesn't behave that way. So when you're 100% correct, you said he's like detailing a double negative, because he's saying it has to be parallel, all this divergent light we see. That's what he's saying. And it can't be divergent. Yeah, sorry.
I got it, page 4. I posted in Master B for everyone. It's page 4 on this Google Books. It says, I'll just read it where it makes a little sense. The next astronomer of special note is Sosigenes, who designed the Julian calendar in the reign of Caesar. He saw no fault in the theories of Hipparchus, but handed them to Ptolemy, the Egyptian astronomer of very exceptional ability, who lived in the 2nd century AD. Taking up the theories of a great Greek predecessor after 300 years, Ptolemy accepted them without question as the work of a master and developed them. Singularly gifted as he was to carry on the work of Hipparchus, his genius was a different order. For while the Greek was the more original thinker and inventor, the Egyptian was the more accomplished artist in detail and more skillful in the art of teaching. Undoubtedly, it was eminently fitted to be the disciple of Hipparchus, and yet for that very reason, he was the less likely to suspect or to discover any error in the master's work. In the most literal sense, he carried on that work, built upon it, elaborated it, and established the Ptolemaic system of astronomy so ably that it stood unchallenged and undisputed for 1,400 years. And during all those centuries, the accepted theory of the universe was that the Earth was stationary while the sun, moon, and stars and planets revolved around it daily. Having accepted the theories of Hipparchus in the bulk it was but natural that Ptolemy should fail to discover the error I have pointed out. Though even had it been otherwise, it would have been as difficult for him to make a triangulation to the stars in the 2nd century AD as it had been for the inventor of triangulation himself 300 years earlier. However, it is a fact that he allowed the theory that the heavenly bodies are infinitely distant to remain unquestioned. And that was an error of omission, which was ultimately to bring about the downfall of his own Ptolemaic system of astronomy.
Well, that's epic, and you know why? Because if we take what they're trying to claim as, let's just say, prior to Ptolemy and prior to Copernicus, a geocentric Earth, then if they're not claiming these massive sizes to the sun and different things like that, then their Earth has to be flat. If you understand what I mean. So you can't presume you're on a globe without having these massive celestial bodies. If you understand.
He said it was stationary. It was not moving. Even today, they say you got to assume the stars are moving, not the Earth. Nothing's changed. They're just hiding the fact that it's built on lies.
Yeah, well, if they're
I hear what you're saying, Brian. Say that again.
Yeah, I'd say it a different way. If their curved Earth is based off of light being almost parallel from their sun, and the sun is really big for that to happen, has to be really big for that to happen, within the heliocentric paradigm, then within a geocentric paradigm, if that sun is not claimed to be the same size and distance, then that's the end. The Earth is not a globe within their paradigm. So if they're claiming geocentric Earth, then that would, or system, then that would mean that they are actually claiming a flat Earth, whether they realize it or not.
Well, they're doing that nowadays.
We
Where's
have
the
to
angle
make the
coming
sun really, really big in order for it to do something that it doesn't do. That's great.
Yeah,
but nothing's changed.
What it is. Sorry.
But nothing's changed, Brian, because that's where they say the measurement comes from. It says right here, for 1400, it says 1400 years, and during all those centuries, the accepted theory of the universe was that the Earth was stationary while the sun, moon, and stars and planets revolved around it daily. So you can't have it both ways, as you're saying. But even today, if you say, where's the measurement coming from? They'll say from the equatorial plane. Okay. Do we assume the Earth is spinning? No. It's easier if you assume the stars and planets are spinning. Okay, so nothing's changed.
No, nothing's changed, and it makes a bit of sense in some way, right? In some ways. Let's just say for argument's sake, the Eratosthenes did exist. Well, if he existed and he wanted to talk about a heliocentric Earth, that he was a believer in a heliocentric system, then the only way for that to work would be with a curved Earth, let's just say. And the claim of the parallel, light being almost parallel from this massive sun, blah, blah, blah. But if anyone is claiming, let's say Tycho Brahe, right? Tycho Brahe was a geocentrist. Now, that would mean, unless he's claiming those sizes to the celestial bodies that are claimed today, these massive sizes, they may not be exactly as big, but they have to be big enough to give them almost parallel light. Unless he's claiming, they're claiming that, then they're talking about a flat Earth. Because the Earth can't be a globe without that power. It can't be claimed to be a globe, right? Without that parallel light claim, which can only happen by the celestial bodies, like the sun and everything else. And well, within their paradigm, where they don't realize it, their moon also gives them the same shadows. But that's a moon shadow. But the point is that without that claim of a massive sun giving them this supposedly almost parallel light, then there is no globe. So anyone claiming heliocentrism or geocentrism prior to that, and that's not a caveat, then it's flat. They were claiming a flat Earth, whether they realized it or not.
That's flat, Jack.
Yeah, because I always suspected. Sorry if I'm cutting in on you. I always suspected that Tycho Brahe was a flat earther, because he was so opposed to Copernicus And I know how Kepler came up with his analemma, and it was the back engineering of just the sun cycle. Now, you can detail, the sun cycle was detailed by astrology before Kepler, right? Long before Kepler. So all you have to do is take that cycle, verify it for yourself, which will be angles to a sun, right, off a flat plane, and then mathematically, right, amalgamate it, back engineer it, and amalgamate it with back engineer it into and amalgamate it with the Copernican model of heliocentrism, which gives them their tilt and the 3 million mile difference from winter to summer in the north, blah, blah, blah. All these things, right, the offset elliptical orbit, all that is all part of Kepler having to back engineer what is just the observations of what the sun always does. Hot always goes to cold. The sun always does this every year. And that's what it is. He took that constant cycle, and that nobody needs to make a claim about the sun about. Nobody needs to claim the sun is any size or distance. It's this thing in the sky. We don't know what it is, and it does this all the time. That's what he took that cycle and he back engineered it. And that's where his analemma comes from.
When Nathan makes a short out of this, all he has to do is let the guy speak. And the guy says, if light is coming in at funny angles, celestial navigation on a sphere, which he doesn't have to say because that's what he's showing, is impossible. Okay. So the question is real simple. Does light come in at funny angles, divergent? Yes. So goodbye, celestial navigation from a sphere surface, from a curved Earth. So goodbye to big and far away. Goodbye to all that. You just brought in the moon, validating Adams and Brian's point of moon shadow. A full moon shadow is the same on the sundial as the sun, and yet one is 93 million miles, one is 250 or so thousand miles away, and that can't be. Okay, well, we just nudge it a little bit. Okay, so you've just said, though, if light comes in at funny angles, your version of celestial navigation from a sphere could never work. That's what I want to hold him on to. So all we have to do is look at how light comes in, and it's at divergent rays, as they call it, or crepuscular, or funny angles. It's over. It's just done.
Anthony nailed it when he said the guy is speaking about a double negative, because the guy is trying to detail, he's trying to tell you how we have all this divergent light, but it's all parallel. And it can't be divergent because it won't be a globe.
Right.
But it is divergent because it's all parallel. You know what I mean? And Anthony even said, this guy's a liar. Well, I think when you were away, I don't know if you heard him, but he might just, but what he said about the moon tells me that he's either an extremely good liar or he just doesn't have a clue. He doesn't realize, he doesn't know. We didn't know this thing about the moon. We didn't know that only up to a year ago.
Do you not think it's very... Do you not think it's really interesting that this video even exists? Because, like, why would this video exist if he wasn't trying to respond to somebody that was saying, like, one of the points that we make? He has to be responding to somebody, or there's no other explanation. Why would this video exist?
No, Anthony, you're giving him too much credit. Listen, there's another part in this video when we play him as the main video. I just did this as an excerpt. Because we're going to play this whole video one day and have a review. There's another part of this video where he's trying to explain the horizon. And of course, he thinks he's on a sphere when he's talking about the horizon, right? So he loses his words, and then he takes his right and left hand, and he makes this, like in football, safe, you just go sideways with your arms. And he says, horizontal. And he wants to say flat, but he can't. But you can tell he wants to say flat, but he can't. He says, and then he stutters like that. So if you want to get there, just watch the video. It comes after this. But the whole point is, this is the problem when you're trying to defend the globe. You run into these problems because your logic in your head still is saying, okay, you got to move your arms left and right and say it's flat. Oh, I can't say that. Horizontal. So they're tripping on themselves.
Yeah,
this is just life.
Football, you're not safe. That's baseball.
Dude,
it's a flat globe.
Dudes. What's up? What's that? Sorry, I've
I've been on the late train lately, and I missed you guys. So, but I'd like to bring up one point, and then I'll close up for a few minutes. You said Eratosthenes sent smoke signals, man.
No, it was carrier pigeons, man. Get with it.
Now,
It's a
he
little
said
bit
smoke
archaic,
signals,
right?
okay? And I nearly pissed myself. Now, why are we going any further? Okay,
Well, no,
he
because-
said smoke signals. You know the stories that they have about Eratosthenes. we snicker to ourselves, right? Because they make up stories. But the smoke signals, that fucking took it for me. I've had it.
Well, you know what he did say? He says, you can go read about it in Wikipedia to get the full story, but I'm gonna do it my way. So he just took liberty and he still smoke signals.
He said smoke signals, and you're still now. I'm going to indict you because after that, you should have shut it down. You should have had mercy, right? And just moved on.
But that was the
now
point.
you went after low hanging fruit. So
Yeah,
I'm indicting the whole panel now.
Okay, but that was the fun part, to rub this part into the baller's face. Imagine being a baller or
The
anti-flat
guy in
earther.
the video said he said smoke signals.
Yeah, he did.
I didn't hear that.
I'm kidding.
Oh, he did. But
Yes,
that's the
that's
whole
why I
point.
said it's a little bit
Oh, no.
archaic.
Nah, I must have been talking to somebody else at that part. I didn't hear that. I
No,
thought
this
you
is-
said that, Tim.
No, I didn't say it. He said it, but he did it in a way where he said, if you want the full story, go to Wikipedia. But then I'm just going to take liberty. And okay, so he had his friend and he did smoke signals, and I lost it too when I first started. But the whole point is
what he
this:
said was he had his student
yeah,
go over there.
500 miles away.
No, he didn't say that
I
in
know.
his first statement. No. He said he had his student go somewhere other than there, and then he sent smoke signals.
That's right. He took the shortcut. But again, it's similar to what we did with the Indian moon landing CGI. It's like when you showed that, people say that can't be real. It's one of those things where you almost want it to come out, where it's so stupid that it makes their claim look even worse.
Well, if I might point out that smoke signals will work if the person is 75 foot away.
You're talking very disrespectfully about Asif, who was promoted to give these smoke signals from making coffee for people. So, don't disrespect Asif and his smoke signal job.
Promoted from coffee maker.
Are you calling him Assy?
Asif.
Asif is the guy's assistant.
As if.
Essay. So my
essay.
I mean, this is low hanging fruit, dudes. I mean,
It is. It is.
You need to find yourself a girl, okay?
Well, he might identify as one. He might identify as one. I don't know. It's comical. Wait until the third video when he cuts out the Earth and takes you to the equatorial plane.
Everything's on the table now. From that point on, 10th.
I know. What do you want me to do? This is the best they got.
Yeah, it's not 10's fault that the guys are crazy. You know what I mean?
No, it's your fault you continue down this path.
I've been saving this for 2+ years just for this moment. And you're going to come and ruin my party.
I'm listening in the background. I'm listening in the background. I'm listening in the background. They're saying that the dude literally said he sent smoke signals, or was that metaphorical for I'm sending
No, he
smoke
said
signals,
that.
like the writing on the wall.
No, he said and he even drew it out. He even drew it out that the smoke signals went in this direction, but it was the wrong direction even.
It was actually a metaphor, though. He actually used a fax machine.
Okay.
But
Okay.
the problem they have is that, what they're trying to claim is their globe identifies as flat. That's what's going on.
There you go.
Yeah, like I said, flat globe.
Yeah, its pronouns is flat, horizontal, and level.
He's basically applying the rule. It's flat, but you can think of it as globe.
Well, we don't have to work at the really is level, right, guys?
Yeah, I mean, the more you say that, and the more you think back, like you can, if you watch that back now after knowing what you know about what he said, how he meant it, and all that, You can see Craig sat there desperately dying to snap his fucking head off, but he can't, and he's realizing that he's wrong, and he can't argue with him. It's glorious. So, I remember when it came out, and Chocolate watched it before me because I don't know whether it was late in the UK. Well, at the time of the day, the time zones meant that I was asleep when it came out. But when Chocolate watched it and told me about it, he said, "Hey, you need to go and watch this. This is brilliant." And I was like, "Oh, really? Where? Tell me." And I went and watched it, and I just watched it, and Craig sat there like a bunny in the headlights. But now you can see, looking back, it's not being a bunny in the headlights. He's dying to snap his head off, because if we said that, he'd never allow us to get away with that. But he couldn't argue it against him, and that's why he looks like a dick.
Do you think George Musa would still talk to Craig now that he's a convicted criminal, outrageously violent, says judge, woman beater? Do you think George Musa would still associate with him, being a convicted criminal and all?
Don't know, but I do often wonder why. I do often wonder whether George Musa wonders why I never got in touch with him. And obviously, I never got in touch with him because I don't need to. The sound bites are enough. I don't need to talk to him. But he must be wondering, did he not get in touch?
But I'm just intrigued to know if George Musa, would endorse Craig, or would he, be re-interviewed by him now that he's a convicted criminal and woman beater? I'm just intrigued to know. Does he support Craig in his woman-beating endeavours as a convicted criminal? Does he support the fact that he's discussing globe Earth matters with outrageously violent men, says Judge?
Yeah. I heard Fight the Flat Earth challenging Bev, and my understanding of the conviction that he got was to do with his neighbour and a push bike. But the rendition that he gave Bev was along the lines of, somebody broke into my house and threatened me and my family, so I battered him. Which is nothing like the story that is reported by the newspapers.
No, but convicted violent criminal offenders often lie about the circumstances and the mitigation around the circumstances. The fact that Craig's a liar doesn't surprise me. He's a convicted violent criminal and woman beater. Those are facts.
He poked her with a cane.
He poked her with a, offensive weapon? Yes, he beat a woman with an offensive weapon. That's correct.
According to him, he poked her with his cane.
Yes. So you say poked, I say beat. Beat, poked. You say cane, I say offensive weapon.
But it's the dilution, isn't it? He dilutes it to make it sound very trivial. But at the end of the day, if it was that trivial, he'd have never been prosecuted. Yeah.
Right, and he wouldn't, have to blame the victim when he described how she raged at him before he beat her with an offensive weapon. Now, he blamed the victim because that's often what violent criminals do. They blame the victim. In this case, the woman he beat, he blamed for him beating her. That's correct.
Yeah. Was his neighbour? Is the neighbour he's referring to a woman, or is that a separate?
Oh no, that's a separate woman beating offence. That's a separate incident where he, according to him, was raged at by a woman, so he beat her with an offensive weapon. That's Craig's other separate violent offence that Craig also is committing. It's multiple offences that are violent, Brian.
I think it was the road rage, that one.
Road rage, call it what you like. The guy's a violent criminal.
Yeah, he is.
I thought it was a single offence. It was multiple?
No, Craig's got multiple violent offences to his name. I mean, I don't know if George Musa knew when he was talking to him that he was talking to a man who is, according to a judge, quote, outrageously violent, end quote. Maybe George Musa, editor of Scientific American, didn't realise he was talking to an outrageously violent, says Judge, criminal when he was talking about globe Earth. Maybe he knew, maybe he didn't. Maybe we should find out. Does he endorse the woman beating that Craig gives out with his offensive weapons in separate incidents and the prosecutions for violent crimes that Craig has suffered? Did George Musa endorse those things? Or maybe we should find out from George himself.
I have this image of him battering this guy, whoever it was. I have this image of Craig basically attacking this guy. But even though he's not Nathan Oakley, in Craig's head, he's got Nathan Oakley's head attached to this guy, and he's taking out his rage on flat earthers out on this poor guy that may well have stole his bike and may well have done a little bit of dodge. But he's taking out his aggression from this topic and applying it against this guy. And that's why it was described as outrageously violent, because let's be honest, it was a push bike. I mean, if he stole it, yeah, he's a dick. But would you really fight somebody over a push bike, or would you just go to the police? Well, he's taking out his rage in this topic on that guy.
It wasn't just a push bike. In fairness, it was a lead up supposedly to incidents, so there was other stuff going on. It was just a constant with his neighbor. In fairness, his neighbor has had bad behavior.
I see.
So,
and it was the same with the woman.
Behavior.
It was the same with her, wasn't it? The random woman who, quote, according to Craig, raged at him, end quote. That was a build-up over a period with that random woman he poked with an offensive weapon, correct? That was also built up over time.
Bit of a pattern forming, though, right?
I don't know about that. But he doesn't.
And these are only the ones we know about.
So it's both simultaneously. It's Craig expresses his outrageous violence, says Judge, both because of a build-up over time, because of a drug addict neighbour, because Craig lives in a terrible area that's full of violent criminals, him, thieves, the guy he's dealing with, according to him, and drug addicts, according to the judge. So that's the general life of Craig. I mean, I don't know if Musa knew any of this either, but there we go. That's just Craig's life as a convicted criminal. Violent, outrageously violent, says Judge.
And these are only the two that we're aware of. I mean, how many other instances were there where they didn't go to the police because there's a general distrust and a disdain towards police these days? You just let a lot of stuff go because it isn't worth the hassle of dealing with the police. Well, these are just the two we know about.
Yeah. And there's no pattern in regards to, it's only because he was suffering from the drug addict thief neighbour for a long period, therefore he snapped. All right. But simultaneously, a woman rages at him that's random on some road rage incident, and he also snaps and starts using offensive weapons against random women. It's like, no, the guy's just a violent criminal.
Yeah, pretty much, because the victims are totally separate.
Well, then the question is, does it really matter if he's a violent criminal when he's lying about the shape of the earth?
I don't know. I mean, that's just what I'm intrigued about from Musa's point of view. You know, why is he being interviewed by what a judge describes as someone who is outrageously violent? Why would that be Musa's pick? Did he just not vet the guy? Does he not care so long as he's talking about the earth being a globe? I mean, we don't have to work at the really is level, but at the really is level, the guy he's talking to beats women. Does he know that?
All I can see is the amount of tension that Craig's got built up inside, like a spring. It's that tightly sprung. He must have been dying to rip his head off, but he couldn't have done because it's George Musa.
Well,
I'm wondering if George Musa had any idea. Sorry, Brian. I was just going to say, I'm wondering if George Musa had any idea that he'd be quoted for the next 2-3 years after that.
That was epic.
It does show why these like Fight the Flat Earth and Rumpus exist, because like essentially they're stopping us from getting to George Musa and co. Because Musa's never going to speak to me. There's no point in me even asking. But he will speak to Fight the Flat Earth and then give us a couple of juicy sound bites that we use ad infinitum, right? But it just shows that Craig and Rumpus and all them, they are literally gatekeepers. Because imagine if we got to Sabine Hossenfelder, she'd be ripped apart, ripped apart, and that's why these people exist.
No, that's a good point, Anthony. What you're saying is George Musa, by what has actually occurred, would rather talk to an outrageously violent woman-beating criminal than us, because the outrageously violent criminal promotes the globe.
And he's not going to ask him awkward questions.
Very much.
Well, isn't that interesting?
Even though the correlation, globe, violent, belligerent, irrational, kind of connects.
I've had Flat Earth Math Charles in a corner for the last few days. I've been asking him, why is it that he's got back garden observations that we can all do ourselves that indicate the shape of the Earth? And a lot of them involve measuring angles, right? Using Euclidean geometry.
Oh, here we go.
I've asked him, why is it that when Fight the Flat Earth is referencing anything to do with sea level, he curves the straight line and applies non-Euclidean geometry? Because if he doesn't do that, then we see stuff we see too far. There's lots of reasons why he does it. I asked him, why is it that he's got one application of Euclidean geometry, Fight the Flat Earth's got a different application of non-Euclidean geometry. Both of them cannot exist simultaneously at the same time, and he will not answer. he'll reword the question that I ask and answer a different point. He'll create a total distraction. He will not answer. But it's just beautiful watching them like dancing in the corner because Craig applies non-Euclidean, he applies Euclidean, doesn't see the contradiction, and doesn't realize that they're incompatible when you side by side. You can't have it both ways. And they just don't like it.
Well, there's no such thing as non-Euclidean because non-Euclidean is the backbone of non-Euclidean is Euclidean. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
All this, what they call spherical trigonometry, something that can't exist, that's all based on angles from a center point. It's all nonsense.
It's funny because like they'll often cite Einstein's phrase where he said words akin to the universe doesn't mandate the use of Euclidean geometry at all. There's no necessary reason for us to use it or not use it. And I used to agree with that initially. I thought, yeah, because the universe doesn't, whatever we live in, doesn't know whether trigonometry exists or not. It doesn't care. It doesn't know. It doesn't care. It has no opinion. It doesn't mandate the use of Euclidean geometry at all. But then you realize that celestial navigation does work, which uses trig and Euclidean geometry.
No, it doesn't. Stop. Stop.
It doesn't use trig.
Stop. It doesn't use trig.
It does use angles and it does use Euclidean geometry.
The term is celestial navigation. That bit's correct. If you say celestial navigation, that is an entity in and of itself. Trig is a separate entity. It's something else. They're similar because they've got angle measurements. What you see on screen now is deriving a circle of equal elevation. The angle is used to derive that circle, but you're not doing trig. That's not trig.
You're using triangles, but you're not using trigonometry.
What did he use angles for? To measure the distance to the stars?
No, you use the co-angle to derive the distance. So what you do is you measure an angle to the star, minus that angle that you measure from 90, and then times that by 60. That gives you the distance to the GP in nautical miles.
Yeah, the only thing being measured is the GP. Angle measurement is not a distance measurement.
You're not measuring the distance. You're deriving it from the angle.
Right.
But the question is, what did he use trig for? Did he use trig to measure or calculate the distance to stars?
You can use it to measure the height of a mountain if you're Al-Biruni.
Yeah, but what did Blurch use it for?
Measuring heights of mountains to derive curved surfaces with flat Earth angle measurements to give you heights of mountains.
I need an example. The height of a star.
You're saying I need an example? I've just given it you. Al-Biruni uses trig to derive the height of the mountain. He makes a triangle and then backs away and makes a different triangle and then derives the difference between the two to derive h of the mountain. Height. One line of the triangle. That's trig. Then he goes up the mountain. So I've been munching this whole time. I'm really sorry, Craig. Yeah, you've got food through your insults. Anyway, that's what the Globers used. You're trying to find somewhere where they use trig and can't be using convicted violent criminal Craig fight the flat Earth.
Yeah.
Al-Biruni's height measurement.
Right, I'll remember that.
You can't use trigonometry with the celestial bodies because you don't know the height of the celestial bodies, and it's possible to know the height of.
Right.
So you can't use trigonometry.
Hey Brian, that's why I love that one show when y'all kept on saying, I think it was Nathan and Q kept on saying, hey, I want to get home, spend like 6 months to a year, but I can't find the height of that celestial body. Otherwise, I would have navigated home already.
I remember when I first came into this topic, right, and the first time I was ever being gaslit overtly by them idiots was with Sean Huffroad and his GeoStreamer and all those idiots, and they were talking about angular size. And I said that angular size is not simply measuring the size of the angle of the thing that you're looking at. It's the measurement of the angle at a known distance. You need the distance element to be able to know its size. And I didn't realize the importance of that at the time, but they were jumping all over. It's just the measured angle, you fucking idiot, and making me feel stupid, right? Because there was about 5 or 6 of them doing the exact same thing. So obviously you question yourself and you go back to the definitions and it says from a given distance. You got to know that distance. So I doubled down and I said, no, look, it literally says this, and they were not having it. If I'd have realized back then the importance of that statement in terms of like the distance to the stars, the size of the sun, all that, it kills their model. But when you've got 5, 6, 7 of them attacking you and you're how stupid you are and all that, it does make you question what's going on.
What did you say to them, Anthony, that they were attacking? What was your exact statement?
The angular size isn't just a measurement. It's a measurement from a known distance.
But it can be just a measurement.
Hold on, you need context,
No.
Brian. They're talking about referencing something with a size, an actual size, and derivation of the actual size from the angular size. That's the context. And when Anthony says, no, angular size, you need the distance, he means, no, angular size will only give you its actual size if you know the distance. That's paraphrasing what Anthony's actually saying, but he's not doing a good job. Sorry, Anthony.
And they were saying, no, you just need the angle. Angular size is just a measured angle. And I'm like, no, it isn't. It's the measured angle.
Well, that's where you're wrong. But an angular size, angular size is just an angle. They are correct, but I know the discussion you were having with them, and it's contextualized around them knowing the size of things by only measuring their angle and inferring scale, which they've assumed to give them size. An angle only is just an angular size of something. It's angular size. Or its arc measurement, if whatever, you can call it whatever you like. It just won't give you its actual size unless you know the distance. It's just Anthony's paraphrasing things badly, that's all. And he hasn't contextualized the discussion he was having.
Actually, you've got it back to front. When you measure the sun, and whatever size the sun presents itself, you measure it. It's incomplete if you say, well, its angular size is X amount of seconds and minutes. You've got to say from 93 million miles. That's what you've got to say. And then the question is, well, how do you know it's 93 million miles? Well, the angular size is not just an angle measurement. And that was the argument I was having. They were saying it is, like you just said, and it's not. The angular size is the angular size. Like it's the same as boiling water, right? Boiling water boils at 100 degrees at 1 atmospheric pressure or sea level. So it's 100 degrees at sea level. Well, the angular size of the sun is whatever measurement you make it at 93 million miles. And then the question is, well, how do you know it's 93 million miles? And that's how we got onto that topic. So you do need both elements for angular size. It's not just a measured angle.
Yeah, but you can just measure the angular size of something and just give it an angle. Like I can measure the angular size of a chair in my kitchen, and I don't need to know the height of the chair to have an angle.
No, you can't. You've got to be really careful, because if you say you can measure the angular size, you've got to also add the distance that you measured it from, because otherwise you have no knowledge.
But I don't have to know. But like just to get an angular size, I don't have to give you a distance to get an angular size. So I can measure the angular size of a pole down the road, and I don't need to know.
If you tell me that your chair measures a particular angular size, and I don't know whether you've measured that from 2 feet away or 25 feet away, if you don't tell me how far away you measured it, then your chair could be enormous.
I'm talking about the actual measurement itself. I don't need to give a distance or a size to the chair. I can just say my chair is 38 degrees angular size.
No, you can't.
I can, but I don't have to give it. I don't have to say any more than that. I can just measure an angular size.
You do, because if I measure your chair at 38 degrees from, say
you're missing the point of what I'm saying. You're missing what I'm saying.
I'm not arguing what you're saying.
Let me read the citation. Anthony, let me read the citation. Altitude. No, just it's just going to clear up everything.
Hang on, Ken. This has to.
Okay, I got to go. That's why I want to read it.
Disagreeing with what he's saying. Hang on. Anthony, I'm not disagreeing with what you're saying. To get the actual size, you need the distance, or you need the distance to get the actual size. If all you have is just an angle. But I can measure just an angle and not know the distance or actual size, and still know that. I can just measure an angle. I can just say that pole is 44 degrees.
You can't, because, right, so you measure your chair at, say, 38
the pole
degrees.
44 degrees from where I stand. I can just make that measurement, and I don't have to have any details with it. I can't claim a distance, and I can't claim an actual size, but I can claim that from where I stand now, that pole is 44 degrees. I can't use it.
The problem is,
but
Brian,
I can make that measurement.
Brian, the problem is I can measure Snaffle or any of the mountains at the same angular size. Just depends on how far away I am to get that angular size. And then by that reference, your chair is as big as the mountain.
You see, I told you, Brian.
Yeah,
contextually, the discussion that he's having when he's having this argument. Hold on, Brian. The context is in reference to things with distance and actual ascribable heights that have got angular sizes being measured of them. But what they have done in argument to to Anthony, when there's a context to what's being argued about, is say no, but strictly speaking, and I've said it, you've said it, and he's still disagreeing with you, that no, an angular size measurement of anything is just an angular size. Anthony's saying no, because Snaefell is the same angle as a further mountain away that's much bigger. Yeah, it is. They're both the same angular size, though, Anthony.
No, right. So there's a difference between the word angular size and the phrase angle size. Now, if you're going to measure merely an angle size, that's Brian's argument, and that's the point Nathan's doubling down with Brian. But you're describing angle size, and that's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about angular size, which is defined, and it requires a distance as part of the measurement. You can't just have the measurement absent of the distance, because that's not angular size by definition. You can bring it up, you can look it up yourself, you'll come to the same conclusion by definition, not by colloquial use, by applying the definition of the term angular size. It's not the same as angle size.
Now,
I've never heard of angle size ever.
I gotta go.
Well, that's what you're describing.
Angular and zenithal heights of stars. What do you mean, pray? It's an old document. I mean to say that when one speaks generally of the height of a star, one does not mean the true distance from the Earth to the star, but the angular distance from star to star. That's if you're measuring, say, the moon with something else, star to star. And the angles do not depend upon length of their sides. The size of a celestial sphere matters not, nor do any of the imaginary extended lines, points of the Earth, such as axes, poles, meridians, parallels, equator, etc. So what you take that one and then you read this one. Altitude or elevation. These are synonyms for the angular height of an object above your horizon at any given moment. When a star is on your horizon, so that it is either just rising or just setting, its altitude or elevation is 0 degrees. And when it's directly overhead at the zenith, its altitude or elevation is 90 degrees. Keep in mind that this is an angle, not a physical distance. So celestial navigation, it's not the size, it's the angle above the horizon minus from 90 times 60 nautical miles, and that's all it's used for. It's not to know the distance from the surface of the Earth of how many miles it's
up. We're not arguing that 10th.
Yeah, we're not arguing that 10th. We didn't, what you just read out there was brilliant, but that's not the argument we're having. My point to Anthony is I can measure the angular size of a chair in my kitchen, and I don't need the distance or actual size to do that. Now, I can't use that angular. I can't use the angular size. I won't change it, but I can't. Give me a second, Anthony. I can't use that angular size for anything because I don't know the distance or the actual size. But I can just measure it there and then and say, okay, that chair has this angular size, right, from whatever distance this is. That's the difference. But you're talking about the use of the angular size. I'm saying you can just measure that angular size and I don't need to do any more.
Brian, you're doing it again. You're measuring its angle size and then misrepresenting it as its angular size when the definition of angular size is defined as requiring two components, not just one. No, I've got it on screen right now. Can you see it?
You've got your definition. I've got mine. Mine comes from physics.au. Angular size. Whenever you look at an object, you are measuring its angular size, the amount of space it takes up in your field of view in degrees or minutes. 1/60th of a degree, 1 seconds, 1/60th of 1 minute, etc., etc. Or you might quantify the angle size in radians if you are so mathematically inclined. It says nothing about distance. It's just the amount of space it takes up in your field of view. That's all angular size is.
Okay. So can you see my screen?
Yeah.
So they were talking about the sun, I think it might have been, or it might have been one of the stars. Doesn't matter what, something in the sky. And it says clearly, it says the angular size of an object is determined by its actual size and its distance from the observer. It isn't just its actual size measured with an angle thing like a protractor. It's the distance too. It's not because otherwise you have that infinitely variable position where the further away it gets, the bigger it has to be to maintain that proportionality. So that's why a mountain can measure at 35 degrees from a particular distance, in the same way as your chair can measure 35 degrees from a particular distance. If you don't put the distance to it to quantify the angular size, your assumed presumption is that the mountain and the chair must be the same size, because you haven't said how far away you're measuring the angle from.
No, but you're not presuming they're both the same size. You're saying that both have the same angular size. But that you don't need.
No.
Hang on. To use the
angle size,
you're mixing something up. You're talking about the use of the angular size, as in to use it for something. The use of it. Hang on, would you please leave me just finish what I'm saying? You're talking about the use of the angular size, as in to get the actual size, you need to know the actual distance. To get the actual distance, you need to know the actual size. But if I don't know any of them, I can still measure the angular size of a chair at a distance. That doesn't change that I can't. I can actually just
only measure the angle size.
There's no rules against it. I can just measure the angular size. I don't have to do
You're conflating the word angle size with angular size, and it's by definition wrong.
Will you get me a definition of angle size, please?
Angle size is what you're measuring.
I want a citation for what you just claimed, which is angle size, because this is what you're arguing against.
Angle size is the measured angle.
Yeah, but you have to get me. You said angular size is different from angle size. That to me is exactly the same as conspiracy cat saying gas pressure is different from pressurized gas. Right? There is no difference.
No, it's not the same. It's a false equivalence. I'm not saying that gas pressure and atmospheric pressure are the same. That's not what I'm saying. I'm saying that there's a difference between a measured angle size compared to the measured angular size, because one of them requires the distance to be stated, whereas the other one does not. And you're not agreeing with that, and that's fine. But it's wrong. But if you don't want to accept it,
hold on 1 second. One sec to interrupt. Sorry to interrupt. 1 sec. Hello. From coe.edu. What is the difference between size and angular size? The main idea here is that the further away an object is, the smaller it appears. We call this apparent size. The angular size of an object, because you're not actually measuring the object's true size. You're measuring the angle it takes up in your vision.
From a particular point.
That's not what it says.
Yeah, but that is what it is.
No, that's not what it's defined as in this instance.
Yes.
Nor was it defined that way in my last definition.
You can deny it if you want, but what you're doing is denying the definition.
Anthony, nobody is denying what's on screen. That's the use of the angular size. Nobody is denying the use of it.
For denying what's written on screen, the angular size is not merely the measured angle. If you don't accept that,
you're losing it over stupid.
I have a question, gentlemen. I have a question. If you're measuring the angular size of a chair that you're using and a mountain, and the chair is right beside the mountain, and you're standing at the same distance, would there be a difference between the angular size between the mountain and the chair?
No, they would appear the same in your view, and therefore their angular size is the same.
Then if the chair is right next to the mountain, right next to the mountain is going to be
wrong, because you've got the cows, right? You've got that scene that you always say: close, big, far, small, right? When you're talking about the distance to or the angular size of the cow in the field, you need to know whether that cow is in the field or is it the miniature in your hand. If you don't know that, then they're both going to have the same angle size, but unless you distinguish the distance involved, you can't tell whether it's the one in your hand or the one in the field that's miles away. You've got to denote the distance to know its angular size. Otherwise, you're stuck with that infinitely variable proportionality argument where it can be any size at any distance. You just slide it up and down.
You're not, Anthony. You're completely. I mean, they couldn't be missing this anymore. And I can measure the angular size of something, and I don't have to know its actual size or the distance or its actual distance from me to just measure its angular size.
Variable scale, Brian. You have no idea.
I'm not claiming any of those things. You're completely missing it. I'm not claiming any of those things. I can just measure an angular size and just go, that's that angular size.
Then you don't know how big it is.
Walk away. I don't need all the information. I don't have to know how big it is if I'm not using it. I can just measure it and walk away without using it.
Now, gentlemen, with that being said,
a final word on it, and then I'm not going to mention it anymore.
I got something for you. For your saying, from what I'm understanding what you're saying, Super Warrior. Now that same chair, for you to make the angular size the same, of course, it's not going to be the same because
We're not saying
if you move that chair closer, if you move the chair closer to the observer that's measuring the angular size, would that change the distance between the chair and the mountain?
Yeah, of course it would, massively.
Right.
Of course it would.
Okay, so is distance something that's relevant and necessary to include? That's what I'm trying to learn. I'm trying to learn, bro. I'm trying to learn.
You can get your thumb and you can put it next to the moon and they're about the same size, right? And Brian's saying that they're about the same angular size. And I'm saying, no, they're not. They're the same angle size. But because you haven't addressed which one you're referring to by distance, you don't know whether, because they're both not the same size. You don't know whether I'm talking about my thumb or the moon in the sky, but they both have the same size when you measure its angle. But it tells you nothing about the things you're talking about.
Yeah, but it's not actual. Angular is not actual. It's a prospective size.
I know it's more than simply measuring the angle, because if you just measure the angle, it means nothing when you're trying to establish how far away the moon is.
You need to know a actual size or distance before you can establish anything about it.
Yeah, we know that. We know that.
Angular size.
That's the whole point. Could you please give me an Anthony Adams for a second, Arwen? Arwen, please. Yeah, I know that. Everyone knows that. You're missing the point. Anthony's saying I can't just measure the angular size of something. I can just measure the angular size of something, but I can't use that. Hang on, I'm not finished. I can't use that measurement unless I have the actual size of it or the actual distance to it. I can't use it, but I can do it. Hang on, I can measure that angular size.
No.
Right. Yeah, you can. You can.
You've got it wrong, Brian.
No, this is ridiculous, Anthony. This is so. Yes, I can. Yes,
No, thank you, Owen. You've been asked by Brian to not make this absolute. Hello? Owen, you've been asked by Brian politely not to make it unlistenable, so you've just decided, no, I'm going to talk through every word of this.
Oh, yes. Blame me for talking through everybody and making a rush. Yes. Thanks, Nathan. Thanks a fucking lot.
But that's literally what you did, though. That's what you did, though. It's like,
yeah, after having to witness another freaking half hour straight of bickering and talking over each other. Yeah, and then I'm going to be pointed at. Thanks a fucking lot for the one, like 30 seconds that I spoke up in the entire damn show. You have to do that. Yeah.
Yeah, when you're going crazy, there's no need for this. We were asked just to leave me and Anthony Adams.
You're all right, man?
Exactly. Let them
sick
go
of
at
the
it.
fucking bickering. I have to hear to this shit an hour yesterday. You won't stop. You won't stop talking over each other. It's fucking agitating.
That's right.
You talking over the top of us.
No swearing.
Please tell us how that helps. I'm not swearing. Please tell us how that helps matters, Arwen. You talking in over the top.
You guys are interrupting Arwen's interruption.
Chocolate, now you're doing it.
Clear it up and cut it off because you just keep back and forth bickering.
Maybe leave it happen. Maybe leave me and Tony go at it. Why do you have to jump in there and make it even worse?
Because we don't need another freaking hour of bickering back and forth of you not listening to each other. That we had yesterday already. We don't need it again.
We need Neil to chime in.
Yeah, Neil
because
and
I
Chocolate.
heard that.
Super helpful, Neil. Yeah, now you don't yell. Now I get angry. Now it's your time to talk over me and get angry, right, Neil? Super helpful. Thanks.
I'm trying to make a point. Didn't you and Anthony go at it for a while, and a lot of good came out of it?
Stop. Can we all get 5 inches closer to our mics? Talk twice as loud. Sounds great.
You know why that is, though, Nathan, right? It's because the sound waves get to the other person a little bit quicker.
Anthony, angular size is just a measurement of something's angle. You can call it angle size all you like, but you're just wrong.
You can't.
Sorry.
You can't. It requires the distance to be stated, otherwise you have no knowledge of how big the thing is that you're looking at.
That's not the claim of angular size.
What if you don't want it? What if you don't want it?
Can I ask a question?
Let me just speak to Anthony. Brian's tried. I've tried. Anthony, you're saying you must acquire the distance. And if you don't know the distance, you can't know its size. Yeah, that's true. But, but what Brian's trying to communicate with you, let's say you've got a sextant. Yeah? That's a tool for measuring an angle, isn't it, Anthony?
Correct.
Right. I point it at Snaefell.
Yeah.
And I say 5 degrees.
Yeah. Yeah,
Okay.
you've not got its angular size.
That is exactly what I've just done.
No, it's not. You've measured its angle size, but you've not got its angular size because you have no knowledge of how far away
You
you
made
are
up
from it.
angle size, Anthony. You
That's
just
what
made that
angular
up.
size is.
No, it's not. You're conflating the word angle size with the word or the phrase angular size. They are
Okay,
not the same
let's try
thing.
differently. Let's just try one last example, then I'll hand back to Brian. I've tried. I gave
I'm
up
waiting
quicker
for the
than you did, Brian.
citation.
You've had a longer crack of the whip than me. I did try once already. Okay, you got your 2 cows, Anthony. You're going to stick one on the
Yes.
window ledge and
Yes.
force it to be, by your perspective, the exact same apparent size as the cow in the distance. So to
Correct.
your vantage, they are, to all intents and purposes, in your field of view, the same size. Okay,
Correct.
that's the scenario. You with me so far?
Correct.
Okay.
Right, yeah, I completely agree.
Okay. Now we're going to measure the angular size of both cows with this sextant.
You're not going to be able to do one. You can only do one and not the other.
Why?
What?
Because you don't know the distance to the one in the field.
I don't know the distance. I don't know the distance to the one on the window ledge.
Yeah, you do, because you put it there yourself. You can measure that with a ruler or a tape measure.
I could, but this is the point that you're missing from Brian. He's tried 5 times. You could run a ruler to the cow in the window ledge, but I'm just not going to.
Then you can't get angular size for either.
I can still point the sextant at it
No,
and
you
measure
can't.
its angular
You're
size.
ignoring
I
the
can.
definition. It requires the distance to be stated. It's
Wrong.
not
You're
just
just
the
wrong.
angle size.
Sorry,
No, it
you're wrong.
doesn't.
It does.
No, it doesn't.
It does. You need to, in the same way that you have to say pressure of the water boils at 100 degrees Celsius at sea level because it varies depending on what pressure you're at and altitude. You have to do the same, the exact same thing with angular size. It is X amount of angles at whatever distance. Because if you don't give the distance, you've just got a cow on a window ledge and a cow in a field that appear to be the same size, and you have no idea which ones you're talking about.
That's
Like, you
correct.
could be on about the one.
Yes, that's correct. Hello.
It's
Hello.
relevant.
Hello. Yes, trying to reply to him. Yes, that's correct, Anthony. You've got 2 cows, the same angular size that you don't know the actual size or actual distance of, but you do know their angular size. You've just measured it.
You've just misrepresented it again. You've just said you've got
Anthony,
2 cows
you're not
that are the
listening to me.
same angular size, but you didn't say they can't be the same angular size if one's on the window ledge and one's in a field.
Yes, they can.
They can't be.
Yes, they can.
No, they can't. Not
Yes,
unless
they
you
can.
identify the
Yes.
distance.
Anthony. Yes,
Again,
Anthony,
you're
that
conflating
joke.
and confusing
Bloody
angle
hell,
size
please,
with
with the
angular
verbal
size.
diarrhea.
No, it's by definition, Nathan. You're just denying the definition.
Right, Anthony, I've heard you say... hello? Yes, I've heard you say the words by definition about 16 times. Thank you. With the verbal diarrhea while I'm trying to respond to you. Yes, you can absolutely have 2 things of differing sizes that are the same angular size. That's why...
No, you can't. You can't, because you have to denote the distance. You're ignoring the distance requirement and saying it's verbal diarrhea. That doesn't make it so.
Citation. You keep
on
defining something that doesn't exist, Tony.
Okay, where's this from?
Distance or size have nothing to do with angular size at all.
It's on
nothing.
screen.
Absolutely nothing.
Okay, then
Angular,
reference it.
angle size, nothing.
Hey,
It's on screen, Arwin.
do you want to
Can you
read
see
it?
the
And tell
screen?
it? Hello? Do you want to read it? Hello? Do you want to read it and tell us where it's from?
Can you see the screen, Arwin?
Yes.
Not Nathan. Not Nathan. Arwin. Can you see the screen, Arwin?
Yeah, I see a screen. It's some random web page shit.
Can you read the words written, not changing them, just read as please.
Yeah, what's the source of this image that you're showing?
Exactly.
So the answer is no, you can't read the words because it devastates the claim.
Can you read them then,
The
Anthony?
claim of your nondescript source.
Not my
that
claim.
obviously not
Hello?
Wikipedia,
Hello?
anything
Hello? Can you hear me
confirmed
trying to
reliable.
stop this? Hello? Please, can you read it then, Anthony?
I don't need to. If you're going to deny the definition, if Arwin and
Please
Brian
read it, Anthony.
and Nathan deny the definition by consensus only, I am incorrect. But you both, all 3 of you, are ignoring that it requires the definition to be satisfied. Otherwise, it's wrong. If you guys want to do that, feel free. But you just
I'll read
fucking
it.
morons.
Can you
No, I'll read it.
can you read the
Anthony, if you
definition for
want.
the people that can't see what you have in front of your face? because we can't see it.
Okay,
and we
for
would
the
like to know
benefit
what
of
the
those that
definition
can't
says.
see what is on screen, it literally has a picture of a guy measuring the size of the moon, and it says with an angular size in the middle, with the distance from it being measured, it says, quote, the angular size of an object is determined by its actual size and its distance from the observer. That second bit is being completely ignored.
No,
now, you
it's
guys are
not.
free to ignore it if you want.
You're an idiot. Your source sucks. And now let me represent an official definition.
Yeah, that
Idiot.
looked like a globe
Idiot.
example.
Hello, can you all
No, it
stop?
doesn't. It's
Stop!
not a globe
Stop!
example.
Stop! Go ahead, Darwin.
Yeah, so here, an immediate search result, yeah? The amount of space it takes up in your field of view in degrees. Yeah?
Yeah, and
that's it.
From a citation called Imagining the Universe.
Not time for you to talk over it. That's it. Yeah, no distance, no actual size. It's how many angles of degrees it takes up in your field of view, and that is it.
It isn't, because it doesn't distinguish between that. It doesn't distinguish between.
Anthony, you're mixing.
Shut
Can you
up,
let Anthony
for
reply?
fuck's sake.
I
Hold on,
won't
Brian.
shut up.
Just let him reply. Go ahead, Anthony.
I'm going to step out because you're just denying the definitions. And if you want to deny the definitions, that's fine. But I'm not playing this game. Have a great day, guys.
We're not denying anything.
Yeah, thanks for sourcing that brilliant page of yours.
Okay, I want to say something.
Okay, now he's gone.
Hang
Let's
on.
Now he's gone. Anthony was wrong. Angular size is merely
Completely wrong.
the size it represents in your field of view. He was wrong. That's all
Right.
there is to it.
Right, but I just wanted to say that picture that he was showing, there was a presupposed assumption of the size of the moon in the factor of that equation. So that seemed to me like a globe thing because nobody knows the size.
No, that doesn't change it. That doesn't change it, D-Rose. It's not a globe thing. That's just an example. That if the moon was that size and that isn't the way,
that's an assumption. That's an assumption,
but
right?
that doesn't matter. No, that doesn't matter to the argument.
Then why did you use?
But it's about what angular size is.
Then Brian, why did y'all use realistic chairs and cows that we know maybe 5 feet?
Okay, the diagram begs the question. I get that. I understand.
Okay, that's all I'm
the
saying.
diagrams begs the
Where
question,
the
but
hell
that's
was
not
this
important to the argument.
Sorry. I just want to know where the hell he even got that from. There was no website link. Like, why wouldn't he say it?
All I'm
Well,
saying is we were using cows.
Weird again.
Hang on. When I asked him to provide citation for this angle size, he refused. He kept on giving me his own description because he made it up. Look, he's wrong. He's talking about the use of the angular size.
Well, I mean,
Not
I have
talking about
one
angular
from
size.
SDSU. It says the ratio of the arc length, the size of the object, right, to the radius of the circle, the distance to the object, is the angular size of the object in radians.
Yeah, but we know all that. That's not something we don't know. It's that Anthony is not understanding to use that angle. If I measure an angular size, it's of no use to me. I can't use it without having the actual size of the object or the actual distance to the object. But that doesn't mean I can't measure the angular size.
Right. In that
But
regard,
you need one of
one
those,
sec.
or there's nothing you have concretely.
One sec. That was Anthony's point. This majoring on the minors, where Anthony's just wrong in terms of what angular size means by definition, because he's got one definition that's got a ball Earth example with a moon and a set distance, and it's describing its angular size in radians. Okay, notwithstanding a single example that has a specific set distance in the diagram that must be referenced to make the sentence make sense. Beyond that, all of the definitions that you will find of angular size will only describe the size it represents in your field of view, measured by angle. That's all it means. Now, Brian's tried to illustrate to Anthony over and over again that what Anthony's example still holds true, that you can't know the distance to the moon or the size of the moon unless you've got its angular size and its distance, alternatively, its angular size and its actual size to calculate distance. If you haven't got those things, you just have the angular size of the moon, which is useless. You can't derive the distance or the size with just the angular size. Where Anthony says, well, the cow, you need the distance. Yeah, to tell you how big the cow is or how far the cow is. But you won't get that information for how big or how far the cows are with just angular size. But that doesn't mean that when Anthony says that doesn't mean angular size isn't size, or angular size must have distance. No, it means that angular size is useless without those things to give you the other. That would be useless without distance to give you actual size, or useless to give you size because you have actual distance. Just terminology. Anthony's majored on the minors, and it looks bad because he's wrong. Oh well. The rest of his point's right.
We discussed all this years ago with him there, so I don't understand how this is just happening again. I thought we were about angular size versus actual.
But
I was trying
you
to
can do
ask
fuck
him
all with angular size.
I was trying to ask him for a while, but I kept getting cut off. Because his citation, if you want to call it that, it said that angular size is determined by the size and the distance. But it didn't say that you required the distance to get the angular size. It was kind of just describing what angular size is as far as relation to the size and the distance of it. But it didn't really say what he was saying, that you require the distance of the object to get the size itself, the angular size itself.
Which is a different issue to the definition of angular size. That's a completely separate thing.
He might have taken that sentence wrong by saying that it's determined by the size and the distance. That he might think it's saying that you require the distance to get that angular size. He might be reading it wrong or something. I don't know.
No, what it was, he read his own, that's why he didn't want to read it out, because he read his own citation and he realised, because Anthony worked in the field of law, he realised that doesn't support him, and then he left. That's what happened.
Yes, that's correct. But fair enough, we'll never mention it again. Good stuff.
Right, so just angular size, you can't do anything with it unless you know the distance, right? Though
you can do F all with angular size. With that, I'm going to say another huge, massive, enormous thank you to both Discord and G+ panels for making today's after show possible. And of course, a massive thank you to all of you in either Nathan Oakley 1980 or Nathan Oakley Premiering streams for hopefully smashing the super chat, liking, commenting, sharing, subscribing, joining as a Nathan Oakley 1980 channel member, and all that good stuff. I've been Nathan Oakley, and I will see you all in the next video.
What a lovely day!